Humph. You're a waste who can't even last a minute. The voice was cold and filled with venom. Su Wanli looked down at me, her skin glowing like pale jade under the soft light of the immortal cave. She didn't even bother to cover herself. Her eyes were filled with nothing but pure, unadulterated contempt. She was the master of Luoxia Peak, a top-tier cultivator at the peak of the nascent soul stage. In the Taishin sect, she was known as the Fairy of Quiet Water, a goddess looking down from the clouds. Then there was me, Lu Feng. I was her Tao companion, but I looked like a piece of withered wood. My hair was gray and thinning, my face was a map of deep wrinkles, and my back was permanently hunched. I was only at the peak of the foundation establishment stage. To her, I wasn't even fit to carry her shoes. I didn't react to her insults. My focus was elsewhere. At that exact moment, a cold, electronic voice exploded in my head. Asterisk ding. Host has completed 81 cycles of yin-yang harmony. Achievement unlocked. Emotional fulfillment. Longevity cultivation system activated. Asterisk. A golden, transparent screen floated in my vision. Host, Lu Feng. Lifespan, 2.5 years. Realm, early foundation establishment, peak. Asterisk status, damaged spiritual root. Natural breakthrough impossible, asterisk. Cultivation method, Taishin Sutra, foundation chapter. Talent, high-grade wood and fire roots. Profession, Tier 2 alchemist, low-grade. I stared at the screen, stunned. I was so old that my body was literally falling apart. I only had 2.5 years left to live, and the system finally decided to show up? Was this a joke? I quickly scanned the system details. It was a system that relied on the favorability of women. If a woman's favorability reached 30 and we shared an intimate connection, I could convert that favorability into cultivation points. These points could upgrade everything: my lifespan, my skills, and even my items. What are you staring at? Su Wanli snapped. She stood up, not even bothering to tie her belt properly. Her movements were sharp and impatient. With a wave of her hand, a blue Taoist contract fluttered down and landed on my chest. Sign the divorce papers and get off my mountain. The word divorce was written in a chilling script. She had already signed her name. I caught the paper, my trembling fingers brushing the cold parchment. I let out a dry, raspy laugh. Peak Master Su is certainly in a hurry. You just got out of my bed, and now you're throwing me out? My words were blunt and crude. Su Wanli's face flushed with rage, her body trembling. She took a deep breath, looking down at me like I was a bug. Lu Feng, have some self-awareness, she hissed. Your spiritual roots are ruined. Your cultivation is worse than my lowest serving maid. What right do you have to be my husband? I sat up slowly. My eyes trailed over her elegant neck and slender waist before meeting her arrogant gaze. 60 years ago, when you snuck into my bed and offered yourself to me, you weren't nearly this loud. 60 years. Back then, I was a genius who had crossed over from Earth. I reached foundation establishment at 16 and was predicted to reach the core formation stage within 70 years. Su Wanli was just a maid I had rescued from a pile of refugees. She had a trash-tier water root and couldn't even step onto the path of cultivation. I was the one who used my reputation to get her into the sect. I was the one who fell for her tears when she promised to stay by my side forever. To protect her, I ventured into a forbidden zone to find the blood pearl fruit to boost her talent. The price was my own future. My spiritual roots were shattered, my cultivation was frozen forever, and my lifespan was cut short. After eating that fruit, she awakened the quiet water body. Her cultivation soared. In just a few decades, she became a nascent soul powerhouse and a peak master. As her status rose, her heart changed. She grew ashamed of me. She felt a crippled old man was a stain on her reputation as a fairy. I knew this day was coming. I had hoped that, for the sake of the past, she would at least let me die with some dignity and bury me as her husband. But she couldn't even wait 2 more years. She wanted me gone now, right when I was at death's door. She was heartless. So, I had made one final demand. She had to sleep with me one last time. I wanted to humiliate her. I wanted her to remember that even if I was dying, she still belonged to me for that hour. Enough, Su Wanli shouted. Mentioning her past as a lowly maid was her greatest trigger. She looked like she wanted to slap me into dust. But she couldn't. Everyone in the sect knew what I had done for her. If she divorced me, people would just say I wasn't good enough for her anymore. But if she killed me, she'd be branded as an ungrateful monster. She cared about her image more than anything. Sign it, she growled through gritted teeth. Don't worry, I said, my voice thin. I have more honor than some ungrateful wolves. I said I'd sign if you stayed the night. I'm a man of my word. I ignored her glare and used a tiny sliver of my remaining chi to sign the paper. As I did, I checked her stats through the system. Asterisk name, Su Wanli. Lifespan, 1,400 years. Realm, nascent soul, peak. Favorability, -60, deep-seated loathing / hidden murderous intent, asterisk. She really did want me dead. If it weren't for the public eye, I'd be a corpse already. I leaned in close to her ear, my voice a low rasp. Peak Master Su, if you ever miss the taste of the old days, you can find me at the back of the mountain. After all, I'm the only man in this world who has ever had a nascent soul ancestor serving him in bed. I didn't wait for her response. I threw on my faded, old Taoist robe and straightened my hunched back as much as I could. I walked out of the cave, laughing loudly, leaving her shaking with fury behind me. As I descended Luoxia Peak, I started planning. I needed favorability to survive. I needed to find the right targets. I reached the foot of the mountain and stopped. A crowd of disciples had gathered, their whispers hitting me like a wave. Look, it's Lu Feng. He's actually leaving. So the rumors were true. The quiet water fairy finally dumped that old trash. I told you he wasn't good enough for the quiet water fairy. He's finally been kicked out like the trash he is. Peak Master Su wanted this divorce years ago. She was just being kind to a dying old man. The whispers hit me like poison needles as I walked down the mountain. I looked back at the peak, my eyes cold. I hadn't even made it past the gates and the news of our divorce had already spread. Su Wanli really couldn't wait to wash her hands of me. I felt a bitter smile tug at my lips. If I hadn't awakened the system, I would have died in shame, alone, and forgotten. But things were different now. I wasn't just going to live. I was going to become a legend. One day, Su Wanli would realize that I was someone she could only look up to from the dirt. By then, she wouldn't even be qualified to be my maid. She would be nothing. I made my way back to my own cave dwelling. A young woman in a long green dress was standing outside the entrance. I felt a small spark of warmth in my chest. At least not everyone in this world was an ungrateful wolf. Her name was Zhuang Baining. Her mother, Su Yuyao, was Su Wanli's niece. Years ago, after Su Wanli became successful, she returned to her hometown to show off. She brought her niece back to the sect just to prove she hadn't forgotten her roots. But once they arrived at the Taishin sect, Su Wanli dumped the girl on me and never looked at her again. Su Yuyao had zero talent. She eventually married and gave birth to Baining. 15 years ago, Baining's father was killed by a demonic cultivator. Her mother begged Su Wanli for help, but she was ignored. Eventually, they came to me. I had no children of my own, so my heart softened. I took Baining in. I spent my life savings and used my skills as a low-grade alchemist to provide her with every pill she needed. I raised her like my own daughter. I walked toward her, a smile forming on my face. I expected comfort. I expected a kind word. You old bag of bones, she snapped, glaring at me with pure hatred. Hurry up and hand over my pills. I froze. My mind went blank. Baining? What did you just call me? Are you deaf as well as old? She sneered. I said, give me the pills, you dying old man. I stared at her, my voice trembling. Why? Why are you being like this? Baining let out a sharp, mocking laugh. You actually thought I cared about you? You're a fool. I only showed you respect because you were my aunt's husband. I thought if I stayed close to you, she might notice me and let me join Luoxia Peak. But now you've been dumped. You're just a piece of trash with one foot in the grave. Why should I waste another second being nice to you? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I quickly opened the system to check her stats. Name, Zhuang Baining. Realm, Chi Refinement Level 8, Peak. Lifespan, 70 years. Favorability, -30, Deep Resentment. The world seemed to spin. I had spent my life raising two women, and in a single day, both had turned out to be vipers. Baining, the girl I had treated like my own blood since she was a child, hated me. I threw my head back and laughed. It was a loud, jagged sound. Tears pricked my eyes, tears of grief, pain, and absolute regret. I regretted everything. I regretted entering the forbidden zone for Su Wanli. I regretted wasting my life and my resources on a girl who saw me as a stepping stone. There was no medicine for regret, but the bitterness was swallowing me whole. Baining looked at my wrinkled face and my shaking body with visible disgust. She didn't care about my breakdown. She had an outer disciple competition in a month. She had already bragged to her friends that she would place in the top 10. If she didn't get enough chi condensing pills to reach level 9, she would lose face. "Stop laughing, old man," she barked. "It's pathetic. Just give me what's mine and get lost." I stopped laughing. My expression shifted into a cold, mocking smirk. Both of these women treated me like garbage because they thought I was useless. They thought I was a dying candle. They had no idea that today wasn't my end. It was my beginning. "What are you looking at?" Baining snapped. "Haven't you seen a beaut?" I didn't let her finish. I swung my hand and slapped her across the face. The sound was like a whip crack. 5 red finger marks blossomed on her skin. Baining stumbled back, stunned. For over a decade, I had pampered her. I had never even raised my voice at her. She had become arrogant because she thought I would never lay a hand on her. You hit me," she shrieked. She lunged at me, her claws out, screaming like a wild animal. I didn't hesitate. I slapped her again, sending her spinning to the ground. "Your aunt is a nascent soul cultivator," I said, my voice cold as ice. "She's ungrateful, and I can't touch her yet. But you're a level 8 chi refinement ant. Do you really think I can't handle you?" I drew my longsword. The cold steel hummed as I pressed the tip against her forehead. She froze, a cold sweat breaking out across her body. She had forgotten one thing. Even if I was old and dying, I was still a foundation establishment cultivator. The gap between us was a mountain. She tried to turn and run, but I waved my hand, pinning her down with my chi. I slammed my palm onto her shoulder, forcing her to her knees. "Let me go," Baining screamed, her face flushed with rage. "If you do this to me, I swear, when you die, I won't even bury you. I'll leave your body to rot in the dirt for the dogs to eat." I looked down at her and chuckled. A few minutes ago, that threat might have hurt. But now, I had the system. I wasn't planning on dying anytime soon. I didn't care about Zhuang Baining's threats anymore. As long as I could find a way to gain favor from women, I could convert it into cultivation points and grow stronger. Dying. Zhuang Baining would be dead and buried long before I ever felt the cold touch of the grave. I looked at her one last time, my eyes devoid of warmth. "Stay here," I said coldly. "When you finally realize what you've done wrong, you can get up." I turned my back on her and walked into my cultivation cave, leaving her pinned to the cold ground. It didn't take long for the news to spread. The great Lu Feng had punished Zhuang Baining by forcing her to kneel. Her mother, Su Yuyao, heard the news almost immediately and came rushing to my cave. "Mom, save me. Please save me." Zhuang Baining wailed the moment she saw her mother. Su Yuyao's eyes filled with heartbreak. She ran forward, reaching out to pull her daughter up, but she couldn't move her. My chi was pressing down on Zhuang Baining like a lead weight. A simple chi refinement cultivator stood no chance against it. Su Yuyao wiped the tears from her daughter's face. "Don't worry, Baining. Stay calm. I'll go beg your great-uncle Lu. I'll make him let you go." She turned toward the entrance of my cave and bowed deeply. "Great-uncle Lu, Yuyao requests an audience." Inside, I sensed her presence. I hesitated for a moment before waving my hand to open the restriction, allowing her to enter. The moment Su Yuyao stepped inside, she bowed again, her voice trembling with apology. "Great-uncle Lu, Baining is still young and foolish. Please, have mercy on her. Don't lower yourself to her level." Su Yuyao was a beautiful woman. The passing years hadn't faded her looks. Instead, they had added a layer of mature elegance to her features. Standing there, pleading with me with those watery eyes, she looked incredibly fragile. I watched her with a cold, detached gaze. First there was Su Wanli, then Zhuang Baining. I found it hard to feel anything positive toward the women of the Su family. Still, I decided to use the system to check her stats. Name, Su Yuyao. Realm, Level 8 Chi Refinement. Cultivation Method, Water Spirit Manual. Lifespan, 40 years. Talent, Waste Grade Water Root. Favorability, 35 points. I blinked in surprise. 35 points? I hadn't expected her to have any positive feelings for me at all. My heart started racing. She was the only person I had met so far whose favorability was high enough to convert into cultivation points. But then, I hesitated. She was Su Wanli's grandniece. Technically, she was my junior. If I pursued a relationship with her, people would laugh themselves to death. Then I shook the thought away. To hell with that. Su Wanli had already kicked me to the curb. We were nothing to each other now, which meant Su Yuyao and I weren't related by law anymore. Besides, I was supposed to be a dying man. Why should I care about what people thought? I needed those 35 points to survive. The question was, how? If I forced her, her favorability would drop into the negatives, and I'd be screwed. I had to be smart. I had to use logic, emotion, and just a hint of a threat. I let out a long, heavy sigh. Yuyao, it's not that I want to punish her. But what she did, it was too much. I told her everything. How Zhuang Baining had insulted me and treated me like trash the moment she thought I was powerless. Su Yuyao stood there, stunned. She had already heard about her aunt Su Wanli divorcing me, and she had secretly been cursing her aunt for being ungrateful. She never imagined her own daughter would be just as heartless. She started to panic. Su Wanli was powerful enough to ignore me, but Zhuang Baining was just a weak cultivator. I could crush her like a bug. Yuyao, I said softly, breaking the silence. It's not impossible for me to forgive her. Su Yuyao looked at me like I was a literal lifesaver. Great Uncle Lu, whatever you want, just say it. If I can do it, I will. I let my eyes wander over her figure and cleared my throat. I don't have many demands. But you know how your aunt treated me all these years. She was cold, distant. I've been lonely for a long time. Now that my life is ending, I want to taste the joys of intimacy one last time. Su Yuyao wasn't a child. She knew exactly what I was implying. Her face turned bright red instantly. Great uncle. I can't. You're my uncle. I gave her a bitter smile. I've divorced your aunt. I'm not your uncle anymore. But. She stuttered, her face flushing deeper. To be honest, Yuyao. I sighed again, sounding defeated. After the way your aunt treated me, my feelings for her died long ago. The only reason I kept providing resources for Baining was because of you. Don't you understand how I feel? Su Yuyao gripped the hem of her clothes, her mind in a whirl. She didn't know how to handle this sudden confession. She thought about all the resources I had given her daughter over the years. If she refused me now, wouldn't she be just as ungrateful as the others? And more importantly, her daughter was still kneeling outside. If she angered me, I might actually kill Baining. Her resolve crumbled. She bit her lip and whispered, Great Uncle Lu. Don't call me uncle, I interrupted. Call me Brother Lu. She nodded, her face burning. Brother Lu, I can do it. But you have to promise not to be angry with Baining anymore. Of course, I said quickly. Once we have this connection, Baining will be like a stepdaughter to me. I won't hold a grudge. Su Yuyao breathed a sigh of relief and looked down at the floor. Then, should we begin? I didn't say a word. I reached out, pulled her into my arms, and began to slowly undo her silken belt. She didn't resist. She even moved her body to help me slide the dress off her shoulders. Soon, a body every bit as beautiful as Su Wanli's was revealed to me. I didn't hesitate. I lunged forward. Before long, the sound of heavy breathing filled the cave. Outside, Zhuang Baining's head snapped up. She stared at the entrance of the cave in total disbelief. She could hear the unmistakable sounds of passion coming from inside. But the only people in there were me and her mother. She didn't want to believe it. She couldn't. But there was no other explanation. You beast, she hissed, her voice shaking with rage. You're forcing her. In her mind, her mother was a virtuous woman who never looked at other men. The only way this was happening was if I was using her life to blackmail her mother. Her heart filled with guilt for her mother and a burning, murderous hatred for me. Inside the cave, a long time later, Su Yuyao lay exhausted in my arms. Brother Lu, no more, she panted, her face still flushed. I really can't anymore. She had assumed that because I was old, I wouldn't last long. She was wrong. We had been at it for nearly an hour, and she was the one who had reached her limit. I held her close, feeling a surge of pride. I wasn't as washed up as I thought. My performance back at Su Wanli's place must have just been because of her cold attitude. With a woman like Su Yuyao, I felt like a young man again. I had almost started to believe my body was completely broken. Now, I understood the truth. It wasn't that I was useless. It was just that Su Wanli, a woman at the peak of the late foundation establishment stage, was far too fierce for my aging frame to handle. But with Su Yuyao, I had regained my former glory instantly. After resting for a while, Su Yuyao finally caught her breath. She looked up at my aged face, a trace of confusion in her eyes. She probably wondered how an old man like me possessed such stamina. I could see the blush deepening on her cheeks as she thought about the experience she had never felt before. Suddenly, a system notification chimed in my head. Asterisk ding. Detected an increase in Su Yuyao's favorability. Current level, 40. Can be converted into 40 cultivation points. Convert now, asterisk. I felt a jolt of surprise. I didn't know favorability could be earned this way. Su Yuyao noticed my gaze and turned even redder, looking as if I had read her innermost thoughts. She quickly tried to change the subject. Brother Lu, about Bai Ningyu. Look at you, worrying again, I said, rubbing her head with a smile. I'm technically her stepfather now. How could I stay angry at her? The word stepfather made her face turn as red as a monkey's butt. She let out a soft, playful scold, calling me a shameless old man. I ignored the tease and pulled 2 bottles of qi condensing pills from my storage bag, pressing them into her hands. Take these for Bai Ning, I told her. Tell her today's matter is forgotten. Tell her to focus on her cultivation so she can get a good result in the outer sect competition next month. I was doing everything I could to push her favorability higher. I can't take these, Su Yuyao protested, trying to push them back. My daughter and I already owe you too much. I really can't accept more. Take them, I said firmly, forcing the bottles into her palms. Consider it a gift from her stepfather. But Brother Lu, these pills are important for you too. You should use them to break through and extend your life, she argued. I gave her a forced, bitter smile. My spiritual roots are damaged. Breaking through is nearly impossible for me now. If you really care about me, just come back and visit me more often. Her face was crimson, but she didn't refuse. She gave a tiny, mosquito-like hum of agreement. I felt a surge of secret joy. This was perfect. I could keep farming favorability from her to fuel my path to immortality. We lingered for a bit longer before she dressed, and I escorted her out of the cave. As soon as we stepped outside, we saw Zhuang Baining. Her eyes were red, and she was staring intently at her mother. Before Su Yuyao could speak, the girl rushed forward. Mom, are you okay? Su Yuyao smiled gently. What could be wrong with me? How could you be fine? I clearly heard. Zhuang Baining stopped herself mid-sentence. She was convinced I had forced her mother, and she didn't want to rub salt in what she perceived as a shameful wound. She bit her lip hard, her eyes burning with pure hatred as she glared at me. I realized then that she must have heard everything. I had been so focused on getting those cultivation points that I forgot to set up a soundproofing barrier. With her cultivation level, it wasn't surprising. But I didn't care. It wasn't like I had anything to hide. Su Yuyao, still oblivious to what her daughter had overheard, asked with concern, Bai Ning, are you all right? Zhuang Baining vowed to herself that she would pretend she knew nothing to protect her mother's dignity. She forced a smile. Mom, I'm fine. I just knelt for a bit too long. Don't worry, Brother Lu said he's forgiven you, Su Yuyao said, glancing back at me. I gave a casual wave of my hand, releasing the restriction on Zhuang Baining's body. She scrambled to her feet immediately and tried to pull her mother away. You child, where are your manners? Su Yuyao snapped. Your Uncle Lu forgave you, even after the ungrateful things you said. You need to apologize to him properly. Zhuang Baining exploded. What? Mom, you want me to apologize to him? Does he even deserve it? Shut up, Su Yuyao shouted back. Your Uncle Lu didn't just forgive you. He gave me 2 bottles of qi condensing pills for you. He wants you to do well in the competition. How can you be so disrespectful? Impossible. I will never apologize to him, Zhuang Baining hissed, her teeth clenched. You dare? Su Yuyao glared at her. If you don't apologize, don't expect me to acknowledge you as my daughter anymore. And you won't get these pills, either. Zhuang Baining bit her lip so hard it almost bled. She didn't refuse immediately this time. 2 bottles of chi condensing pills were a massive deal. With them, she had a high chance of reaching the 9th level of chi refinement. She could win the competition, get the rewards, and eventually find a foundation-building pill. Then, she could become strong enough to take revenge for her mother. She told herself she wasn't doing this for the pills. She was doing it for the sake of long-term revenge. With that thought, the resistance in her heart faded. She bowed stiffly toward me. "I'm sorry, Uncle Lou." I waved her off. "Forget it. It's over. You two should head back." Su Yuyao pulled her daughter along, gave me one last respectful bow, and left. I couldn't wait to get back inside. Once I was alone in the cave, I pulled up the system interface. System, convert Su Yuyao's favorability into cultivation points immediately. Asterisk ding. Congratulations. Host has obtained 40 cultivation points. Asterisk. As the points registered, I learned another rule of the system. There was a 1-month cooldown for converting a specific woman's favorability. I breathed a sigh of relief. At least it wasn't a one-time deal, or I'd have to find a ridiculous number of women to keep this going. I looked at my status panel. Right now, I could only upgrade my lifespan or my alchemy skills. The option for spiritual roots was grayed out. I frowned, guessing it was either because I didn't have enough points or because the system couldn't fix them. But if the system could grant extra life, I was betting on the points being the issue. Regardless, I had a more pressing problem. My body was in a state of decay. My blood was weak, my true chi was depleted, and my combat power was almost non-existent. That 2.5-year lifespan was a sword hanging over my head. I had to deal with that first. According to the system, 2 cultivation points equaled 1 year of life. I didn't hesitate. I poured 20 cultivation points directly into my lifespan. Instantly, my remaining time jumped to 12.5 years. As the numbers changed, a wave of warmth flooded my body. The decaying, sluggish feeling in my blood vanished. I felt revitalized. I wasn't a young man again, but I was no longer standing at death's door. Most importantly, my combat power at the peak of the early foundation establishment stage had fully returned. I let out a long, shaky breath of relief. Now I had 20 points left. I fell into deep thought. Should I save them to fix my spiritual roots later, or use them to upgrade my skills now? Both options had merits. It was a tough call. A voice from outside the cave shattered my focus. "Is Lu Feng here?" In the Taishin sect, reaching the foundation establishment stage meant becoming an honorary member of the sect. If you passed certain trials, you could even hold actual power. I frowned and walked out of the cave. 2 middle-aged cultivators in Outward Affairs Hall uniforms were waiting. Both were at the peak of early foundation establishment. I cupped my hands. "Fellow Taoists, how can I help you?" The leader had a cold, stony face. He pulled a wooden tablet from his storage bag. Records show that Lu Feng has not completed a single sect mission in 30 years. You are hereby ordered to complete 3 missions within 3 months. Do you have any objections? My heart sank. Normally, Chi refinement disciples did 1 task a year, while foundation establishment cultivators did 1 every 10 years. Su Wanli had been distant, but I had to admit, her status as a nascent soul cultivator had protected me. The Outward Affairs Hall had waived my duties for decades because I was her husband. Now, she had barely announced our divorce, and they were already at my door demanding back payment. It was cold. It was realistic. But after dealing with Zhuang Beining, I wasn't even angry. "I have no objections," I said calmly. The lead cultivator blinked, surprised. His orders were to punish me if I resisted, but I was being too cooperative. He cleared his throat. "Fine. You must report to the hall within 3 days to accept your missions or face the consequences." They left without another word. I went back inside, my expression darkening. The choice of how to spend my remaining points had just been made for me. Sect missions for Foundation establishment cultivators were dangerous. Many involved life or death risks. At my current strength, I couldn't guarantee I'd survive all 3. I needed more power. My cultivation was stuck because I had damaged my foundation years ago searching for blood pearl fruit for Su Wanli. I could still break through to the middle stage, but it would cost 10 times more resources than a normal cultivator. I calculated that I'd need at least 50 high-grade Qingyuan pills. Those were second-tier, mid-grade pills. A single high-grade one cost 7 or 800 spirit stones. I was only a low-level second-tier alchemist. Between maintaining my own state and funding Zhuang Beining's training, I was broke. I had asked Su Wanli for help in the past, but she either ignored me or treated me like a nuisance. But the system changed everything. It didn't just upgrade me, it could upgrade items. I dumped everything from my storage bag onto the floor, looking for something to enhance. Asterisk ding. Detected. Low-quality Qi condensation pill formula. Consume 10 points to upgrade to perfect grade formula. Asterisk. I stared at the prompt, my eyes wide. There's an old saying, all medicine is 3 parts poison. Pills usually left toxic residue in the body, which is why they were ranked from low to high grade. But a perfect grade pill was flawless. 0 toxins. The body could absorb it completely, and it worked 30% faster. Most importantly, they were legendary for breaking through bottlenecks. Even though a Qi condensation pill was only first tier, a perfect grade version was a holy relic for Qi refinement disciples. One pill could sell for more than a standard high-grade Qingyuan pill. In the Taishan sect, these only appeared by pure luck when a master alchemist had a miracle run. I had brewed hundreds of batches in my life and never seen one. This formula would let me make them with a 100% success rate. It was a gold mine. If the Golden Core Elders found out, they'd kill me just to own it. It was a never-ending source of wealth. Upgrade it, I whispered. Information flooded my brain. It was like a tidal wave of alchemical secrets, settling into my mind until I understood the formula better than my own name. I sat in silence for half an hour, digesting it all. I had to be careful. I couldn't let anyone know I had this formula. But as a second-tier alchemist, selling 1 or 2 lucky, perfect pills wouldn't draw too much suspicion. It was time to start making the spirit stones I needed to survive. I made my decision. There was no time to waste. I pulled out my cauldron and my remaining herbs, setting them up with practiced movements. I activated the formation on the base of the furnace, and a steady alchemical flame roared to life. Following the steps of the perfect grade formula etched into my memory, I tossed the herbs in one by one. I spent over 4 hours refining the essence. When the heat finally died down, 9 milky white pills, each the size of a longan fruit, lay quietly at the bottom of the cauldron. I picked one up and took a long breath. The scent was intoxicating. It was exactly like the ancient text described. Ordinary pills only smelled for a moment after they were formed, but a perfect grade pill held its fragrance forever. I quickly tucked them into a jade bottle and hurried toward the Outward Affairs Hall. I needed to sell these to buy Qingyuan pills. I still had 10 system points left, and I planned to use them to upgrade the Qingyuan formula next. If I could produce a perfect grade version of that, my breakthrough to the middle stage was guaranteed. The Outward Affairs Hall was the heart of the Taishan sect. It was where disciples took missions, bought supplies, and traded in a small internal market. The moment I stepped inside, I felt eyes on me. Thanks to my marriage to Su Wanli and our recent divorce, I was a local celebrity for all the wrong reasons. I ignored the whispers and walked straight to the alchemy counter. A woman sat behind the desk. Her name was Han Yuelon, a Foundation establishment cultivator at the peak of the late stage. She was stunning, with a cold, elegant face and a figure that could stop a man's heart. Her waist was impossibly thin, contrasting with her curves in a way that always drew a second glance. We had entered the sect around the same time and shared a casual, professional friendship. "Junior brother Liu," she said, a small smile breaking her icy expression. "What brings you here?" "I'm here to sell some Qi condensation pills," I replied. "The usual rates apply," she said, reciting the price list. 3 low-grade spirit stones for a low-grade pill, 5 for mid-grade, and 10 for high-grade. "What do you have?" I looked her in the eye. "What's the price for a perfect grade pill?" Han Yuelon's eyes snapped wide. She froze. "You have a what?" "A perfect grade pill," someone nearby shouted. The hall went quiet for a heartbeat, then erupted in laughter. "Old man Liu, are you dreaming?" a disciple mocked. "A treasure like that? Where would someone like you get it?" "Maybe his ex-wife gave him a few as a parting gift," another sneered. "Doubtful. Even Goddess Su's top disciple has been begging for one. If she had them, she'd give them to her own people. The old man has finally lost his mind after the divorce." I didn't say a word. I just reached into the jade bottle and poured 2 milky white pills onto the counter. I had 9, but I wasn't stupid. Selling them all at once would be suicide. I needed to test the waters first. This world was a jungle, not a fairy tale. As the pills hit the wood, a delicate, pure fragrance wafted through the air. It didn't fade. It hung there, thick and sweet. The mocking laughter died instantly. The silence was deafening. After a full minute of the scent lingering, someone finally gasped. The fragrance isn't fading, it's real. It's actually a perfect grade pill. My God, how did he get those? He's about to be rich. Envy burned in their eyes. A single perfect grade pill was worth a fortune, even to a foundation establishment cultivator. Hanuelon reached out to grab them, but I was faster. I swept them back into the bottle and smiled at her. The sec price is 700 low-grade spirit stones per pill, she said, her voice trembling slightly. I nodded. It was a fair price. I pulled out 3 more bottles of standard pills I had made previously. I'll sell these as well. Hanuelon didn't look at the common pills. She stared at me. Junior brother, how did you get those too? I pointed at the common bottles. I got lucky while refining these. She didn't doubt me. It happens sometimes. Master alchemists would occasionally hit a stroke of luck and produce a miracle. The fact that I was only a low-tier alchemist made it rare, but not impossible. She quickly did the math. 2 perfect grade pills for 1,400 stones. 3 bottles of mixed quality pills for 190. Total, 1,590 low-grade spirit stones. She piled a mountain of glowing white stones on the counter. I didn't take them. Senior Sister Han, I asked, how much for a low-grade Qingyuan pill? She paused. Everyone knew my story. I had ruined my foundation for love, and now I was stuck at the early stage. Without Su Wanli's resources, most people thought I was finished. Are you planning to use them to force a breakthrough? She asked, her brow furrowing. Junior brother, that's dangerous. With your damaged foundation, you could die. I gave her a calm, tired smile. Cultivation is a struggle against fate. Some fight from the start, others wait until the end. I'm already dying, sister. If I don't fight now, I'll go to my grave full of regrets. That's not how I want my story to end. She shook her head, pity in her eyes. She thought I was acting out of spite, trying to prove I wasn't a waste after being dumped. She didn't know a low-grade pill wouldn't be enough for me. But I wasn't planning on using a low-grade one. Hanuelon stared at me, her eyes filled with a mix of pity and sorrow. She knew my body couldn't handle the strain of a breakthrough. If I had tried this 30 years ago, I might have stood a chance. Now, in her eyes, I was just a desperate man committing suicide. She didn't realize that while she had given up on her own path, I was just getting started. Low-grade Qingyuan pills are 300 stones each, she said softly, her voice regaining its usual cold professional edge. Mid-grade are 500, and high-grade are 1,000. I did the math in my head. Even if I emptied my entire savings, I couldn't afford a full set of high-quality pills. I settled for 5 low-grade Qingyuan pills, leaving me with only 90 spirit stones in my pocket. It was a gamble, but it was all I could do. As I turned to leave, I felt Hanuelon's gaze lingering on my back. She was a lonely soul in the Taishin sect. Her only real friend, our senior sister Yen Nanxian, had vanished years ago during a mission. Now, I was the only one left she could talk to, and she was convinced I was walking to my death. She probably thought everything would be different if I hadn't sacrificed myself for Su Wanli all those years ago. Suddenly, a notification pinged in my mind. Asterisk ding. Hanuelon's favorability has increased. Current level, 15, asterisk. I glanced at the system interface. Her stats popped up, 75 years of lifespan, a peak foundation establishment cultivation, and a high-grade ice spirit root. I was surprised. I hadn't expected her pity to turn into favorability points, but I didn't have time to dwell on it. I hurried back to my cave dwelling. I had a theory to test. Meanwhile, over at Luoxia Peak, a woman in a red dress bowed low before Su Wanli. Master, news from the affairs hall. Lu Feng sold 2 perfect-grade qi condensation pills. He bought low-grade Qingyuan pills and seems intent on forcing a breakthrough. Su Wanli opened her eyes, a cold, satisfied smile spreading across her face. She knew my condition better than anyone. A forced breakthrough meant certain death, and that was exactly what she wanted. To the world, she was a powerful cultivator. To me, she was once just my mate. I was the one who had carried her to where she was, and my existence was a living reminder of her humble, shameful past. She couldn't kill me herself without facing backlash from the sect, but if I died trying to chase my lost glory, that was perfect. The rumors would die with me. She didn't care about the perfect grade pills. Such low-level items were beneath her notice now. Back in my cave, I pulled out the 5 low-grade pills. Asterisk ding. 5 low-grade Qingyuan pills detected. Spend 5 cultivation points to upgrade to perfect grade. Asterisk. I didn't hesitate. Do it. The pills glowed with a mysterious light, vibrating in my palm before settling into a flawless, translucent state. A rich medicinal fragrance filled the room. These were perfect grade. The success rate for a breakthrough would be massive. But I wasn't ready yet. I needed security. I looked at the defensive formation guarding my cave. A basic earth spirit shield. Asterisk ding. Low-tier defensive formation detected. Spend 3 cultivation points to upgrade. Asterisk. I clicked yes. The formation flags hummed, the energy shifting and thickening. Within seconds, it had become a high-tier grade 2 formation, capable of blocking an attack from anyone below the mid-stage of gold core. Now I was safe. I sat cross-legged in the deepest part of the cave and swallowed the first pill. It melted into a torrent of spiritual energy, surging through my meridians. I pushed it toward the bottleneck, but the barrier barely budged. I didn't panic. I swallowed the second, then the third. Finally, as the 4th pill's energy reached its peak, I felt a violent crack. The barrier shattered. Power flooded my body, revitalizing my withered veins. Mid-stage foundation establishment. I actually did it. I opened the system panel, my breath hitching. My lifespan had jumped to 30 years. My cultivation was stable. I looked at my hands and started to laugh. Tears of pure joy streamed down my face. For years, I had lived in despair, watching Su Wanli thrive while I rotted away. Everyone said I was finished. Just you wait, Su Wanli. I whispered, my voice thick with hatred. One day, you'll be the one begging at my feet. I swallowed the 5th and final pill to steady my new realm. I felt stronger than I had in decades. While I was celebrating my rebirth, the news was already spreading. In the outer sect training rooms, Zhuang Beining's eyes went wide as she heard the report. Lu Feng, that waste actually refined perfect grade pills. Zhuang Beining stared at her friends, her face a mask of pure disbelief. She was sitting with several other women of similar age, all of them outer sect disciples. One of them leaned in, her voice dripping with mock sympathy. It's true, Sister Beining, the girl said. Lu Feng took those perfect grade qi condensation pills to the Outward Affairs Hall. He traded them for clear source pills. I thought he treated you like a daughter? It doesn't look like he cares much about you if he's selling treasures like that instead of giving them to you for your breakthrough. If I were you, I'd be careful. He isn't sincere at all. Hearing this, Zhuang Beining's teeth ground together. That animal. He had slept with her mother, and all he gave them were 2 bottles of ordinary pills. He wouldn't even spare a single perfect grade pill for her. It was despicable. Do you think he has any more left? Another girl asked. She was quite pretty and seemed curious. Probably not, the first girl replied, shaking her head. Perfect grade pills are incredibly rare. You can't just make them whenever you want. Then again, maybe he got lucky and had a few more in that batch. Beining, you're close to him. Why don't you go ask? Zhuang Beining's mind started racing. Lu Feng might hate her right now, but he clearly had feelings for her mother, Su Yuyao. After all, they had already done that together. She could send her mother to ask him. She quickly bid her friends goodbye and rushed home. But when she finally stood in front of her mother, the words died in her throat. She couldn't exactly tell her mother to go sleep with Lu Feng again just to get a pill. Beining, is something wrong? Su Yuyao asked, looking at her daughter's conflicted face. Zhuang Beining gritted her teeth and blurted it out. Mom, I heard Lu Feng sold 2 perfect grade pills at the Outward Affairs Hall. Can you go ask him if he has any more? Su Yuyao's face instantly flushed crimson. The mention of Lu Feng's name brought back vivid memories of that day in his cave dwelling. He looked old, but his body had been powerful and relentless. She still couldn't forget the feeling. She quickly shook the thoughts away, cursing her own shamelessness. She glared at her daughter. Your Uncle Lu already gave you ordinary pills. How can you be so greedy? You're asking for too much. Mom, how is this greedy? Zhuang Baining snapped. He owes me. How does he owe you? Su Yuyao asked. Zhuang Baining almost screamed that he had slept with her, but she caught herself just in time. Her mother had sacrificed herself for her sake. To bring it up now would just be hurting her all over again. She couldn't do it. She lowered her head and walked away in silence, cursing Lu Feng's ancestors to the 8th generation. In her mind, this was all his fault. If he had just given her the pills in the first place, none of this would have happened. He forced her mother into his bed, and now she didn't even know how to approach him for the good stuff. Lu Feng, you deserve to die, she thought viciously. Su Yuyao watched her daughter leave and sighed. She didn't know how to handle her anymore. 2 days later, I finished stabilizing my cultivation. I was officially a mid-stage foundation establishment cultivator. The medicinal power of those perfect-grade clear source pills was incredible. With my damaged spiritual roots, it should have taken 2 months to stabilize, but I did it in 48 hours. It was time to head to the Outward Affairs Hall to accept my missions. The deadline was less than half a day away. I had to stay in the Taishan sect for now. Su Yuyao was currently the only woman providing me with system points, and I couldn't just take her with me. She wouldn't agree, and she wasn't strong enough to survive outside anyway. Plus, I knew other women here, like Han Yuelon. Her favorability was already at 15 points. If I worked hard, she could be another source of points. I stepped out of my cave, but I stopped immediately. My brow furrowed. There were marks on my protective formation, signs of an attack. Cold sweat pricked my skin. Thank God I had used my points to upgrade the Earth Spirit Shield formation. If I had been using the old version, these attacks would have shaken the cave and likely caused my breakthrough to fail. My face darkened. Who did this? I hadn't made any enemies in the sect over the years. Could it be Su Wanli? No, if she wanted me dead, she wouldn't bother scratching at my door. She'd just kill me. I scanned the area. The marks weren't from a single strike. There had been at least 5 or 6 separate attacks. Whoever it was, they were persistent. I decided I would hide nearby in a few days to catch them in the act. But first, I had to deal with the missions. Junior Brother Lu? I ran into Han Yuelon just as I reached the Outward Affairs Hall. She looked at me with wide eyes. Didn't you just get those pills to break through your bottleneck? Wait. Her voice trailed off, and her expression shifted to pure shock. You reached the mid-stage? I forced a modest smile. I got lucky. The pills worked better than expected. Han Yuelon stood there dazed. This wasn't just luck. A man with damaged roots reaching the mid-stage with just a few pills was unheard of. Nobody would believe it. Congratulations, junior brother, she said, recovering her senses. She paused, then lowered her voice. Do you have any more of those perfect-grade pills? I immediately went on high alert. I put on a bitter smile and sighed. Sister, I've been refining pills for years and only got lucky that one time. I sold both of them to you. I don't have anything left. She looked disappointed but didn't push it. We chatted for a moment before parting ways. I hadn't gone far when another voice called out to me. Junior Brother Lu, wait a moment. I turned around to see a middle-aged cultivator with a goatee. He was at the peak of mid-stage foundation establishment. Is there something you need, senior? I asked. The man bowed slightly and smiled. I am Lu Yuancheng from the Red Fire Peak. I'm here because I wanted to ask about those 2 perfect-grade qi condensation pills from the Outward Affairs Hall, the man said. Were they your handiwork, fellow cultivator? My heart skipped a beat. I recognized his robes. He was from Red Fire Peak, the center of alchemy for the Taishan sect. They were famous for their pill making, and they even had a nascent soul ancestor backing them. Why was a specialist like him looking for me? I kept my face like stone. Yes, I replied calmly. I made them. Lu Yuancheng smiled. Good. I'll get straight to the point. The Outward Affairs Hall only gives you 700 low-grade spirit stones per pill. I'm willing to offer 800. If you produce any more, sell them to me instead. What do you say? I let a flicker of greed cross my face before quickly replacing it with a heavy sigh. I'd love to, senior, but I've been refining pills for decades and only got lucky this once. Who knows when I'll see another perfect grade result? No rush, Lu Yuancheng said, his smile widening. Just find me when you do. It's a deal, I promised. He left with a satisfied look, but as soon as he was out of sight, my expression darkened. I didn't like this. First Han Yuelon, now a specialist from Red Fire Peak. They were like sharks smelling blood. Red Fire Peak produced 80% of the sex pills. Why would a peak mid-stage foundation establishment cultivator come all this way just for me? Something felt off. I decided right then that I wouldn't sell any more perfect-grade pills inside the sect. It was too risky. I headed straight to the mission counter. A golden core elder sat there, looking bored until I spoke. Disciple Lu Feng, here to accept sect missions. The elder looked up, his eyes narrowing as he recognized me. Being the ex-husband of a nascent soul ancestor made me a local celebrity for all the wrong reasons. Then his eyes widened. Weren't you at the peak of the early stage? He asked. When did you reach the mid-stage? I got lucky a few days ago, I said with a modest bow. The elder chuckled. Luck, indeed. He waved his hand, and over 100 gray jade slips floated before me. Pick your tasks. I scanned the slips carefully. I needed missions that were efficient but wouldn't draw too much heat. I chose 3. The first was to provide a 500-year-old clear spirit fruit. With my system, I could easily upgrade a standard herb's age. The second was to hunt 2 second-tier demon beasts for their cores. Easy enough. The third was to kill 3 demonic cultivators at Blood Demon Cliff. The strongest was only at the peak of the early stage. It was a long trip, but the danger was low. The elder registered my tokens and watched me walk away. I could hear him muttering under his breath about how my breakthrough might actually be a curse. He probably thought Su Wanli would be annoyed that I was living longer instead of just dying quietly. He wasn't wrong. She couldn't kill me openly without ruining her reputation, but the longer I lived, the more I was a stain on her past. I didn't go back to my cave. Instead, I headed to Chongping Town at the foot of the mountain. This was where the relatives of outer disciples lived. I was looking for Su Yurao. I needed to see if I could squeeze a few more favorability points out of her. I reached her house just as her daughter, Zhuang Beining, was walking out. She froze when she saw me. Her eyes filled with pure, unadulterated hatred. What are you doing here? She hissed through gritted teeth. I'm here to see your mother, I said, giving her a small, teasing smile. She looked like she wanted to spit in my face. You've caused her enough pain. What else do you want? You're talking nonsense, I replied smoothly. I would never dream of hurting her. Zhuang Beining trembled with rage. She knew exactly what had happened between us, even if she couldn't prove it. Before she could scream at me, a soft voice called out from the courtyard. Beining? Who are you talking to? Su Yurao stepped out. When she saw me standing there, her face instantly turned a deep shade of crimson. She looked beautiful, even with the nervous tension in her eyes. Yurao, I said, my voice warm. She winced at the intimacy of the name, especially with her daughter standing right there. She looked terrified that Beining would notice the spark between us. She didn't realize her daughter already knew everything. Beining, didn't you have an appointment at the training hall? Su Yurao asked, her voice shaky. You should go. Don't be late. Zhuang Beining looked back and forth between us, her heart breaking for her mother. She probably thought her mother was just submitting to me to protect her. She gave me one last death glare and walked away, her head low. Once we were alone, Su Yurao let out a long breath of relief. Then she turned to me with a pout. Brother Lu, are you trying to make sure Beining finds out about that day? I stepped closer, ignoring her protest. So what if she knows? What's wrong with a man and woman enjoying each other's company? I asked, a playful glint in my eyes. Su Yurao's face turned a deep shade of crimson. What are you saying? That time, it was only because I couldn't say no to you. I have nothing to do with you. I let out a long, heavy sigh, my expression turning bitter and weary. I understand. I'm just an old man with one foot in the grave. I can't give you happiness. It's only natural you'd want to keep your distance. Su Yurao froze. She had only been acting shy, the way women do, but she hadn't expected me to take it so seriously. She opened her mouth to explain, but I cut her off. Actually, I came here today because this might be the last time I see you, I said, my voice dropping to a somber tone. Her eyes widened with panic. Brother Lu, what do you mean? Is it your lifespan? She covered her mouth, her eyes filling with sorrow. I still have a few years left, I said with a forced, wry smile. But the Outward Affairs Hall found me 2 days ago. They're demanding I complete 30 years of overdue sect missions within 3 months. If I don't, they'll expel me. I let out another hollow laugh. If I were young, these missions would be easy. But I'm old now. My strength is a shadow of what it used to be. I can't finish them. Soon, I'll be kicked out of the Taishan sect. I won't even be allowed to live here in Chongping Town anymore. Brother Lu. Su Yu Rao wanted to comfort me, but the words wouldn't come. Being kicked out doesn't matter much to me, I said, looking deep into her eyes with intense affection. My only regret is leaving you behind. After I divorced your aunt, I thought I could finally pursue my true love and spend my final years with you. But I guess it was all just a dream. Brother Lu, she cried out, her heart breaking. I held up a hand to stop her. Enough. Let's not speak of sad things. Yurao, I came here today to help you increase your strength. I'm leaving soon, and your aunt is a cold-hearted woman. If I'm not here to look after you, I'm afraid you'll be bullied. I took her hand and led her into the courtyard, acting as if I were being incredibly secretive. I pulled out a small jade bottle and pressed it into her palm. This is a perfect grade qi condensation pill. I managed to refine it by pure luck. What? A perfect grade pill? Su Yurao gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Even with her low cultivation, she knew the staggering value of such a treasure. Just recently, Zhuang Baining had been pestering her to ask me for one. She never imagined I would just give it to her. She tried to push it back. No, Brother Lu. This is too precious. I can't take this. Take it, I said firmly, closing her fingers over the bottle. I pulled her into the bedroom and shut the door. Take it now and break through. Once your level is higher, I won't have to worry about your safety after I leave the sect. Su Yurao was moved to tears. I was facing exile, yet my only thought was for her well-being. She looked at me like I was her entire world. A notification pinged in my mind. Asterisk ding. Su Yurao's favorability has increased. Current level, 50 points. Asterisk. I felt a surge of relief. It worked. 10 favorability points were equal to 10 cultivation points. If I played this right, I could boost my own strength significantly. The value of that pill was nothing compared to the system rewards I would reap. Yurao, what are you waiting for? I urged. Take the pill. She looked at the fragrant medicine, hesitating. Brother Lu, my spiritual roots are poor. I'm a waste of a pill this good. Maybe I should save it for Baining. Absolutely not, I snapped. Baining is young. She has plenty of opportunities. But you've already missed the best years for cultivation. Without a pill like this, you'll never break through. But, no buts. Swallow it. Su Yurao gave in and swallowed the pill. The moment it hit her stomach, a violent surge of medicinal power flooded her meridians. She hurriedly sat cross-legged and began circulating her water spirit art, trying to guide the energy into her dantian. But her talent was so poor that she couldn't control the flood. Her face turned pale with panic. Just as she was about to lose control, I pressed my hand against her back. Don't resist, I whispered. I'll help you refine it. She relaxed, letting my qi guide the chaotic energy. Under my direction, the medicinal power smoothed out and flowed into her dantian. 2 hours later, the process was complete. Her cultivation jumped from the peak of the 2nd level of qi refinement all the way to the peak of the 4th level. It was a 2-level jump, but I secretly shook my head. For most cultivators, there are no bottlenecks before the 10th level. With a perfect grade pill, she should have reached the 6th or 7th level. Her spiritual roots were so narrow they simply couldn't hold the excess energy. I was disappointed, but Su Yurao was ecstatic. She never thought she'd see the 3rd level in her lifetime, let alone the 4th. She looked at me, her eyes shimmering with raw desire and gratitude. She knew everything she had now was because of me. Brother Lu, she whispered. I looked up at her. Under my gaze, she slowly reached for the ties of her dress. The pale fabric fell away, revealing her stunning body. Her skin was white as jade, her curves soft and inviting. My blood began to boil. Before I could move, she lunged at me, pinning me down onto the bed. Wait, I managed to say. Let me set up a soundproofing spell. If Baining comes back, it's fine. She breathed, her voice thick with passion. She went to the training hall. She won't be back until tomorrow morning. But she cut me off by pressing her lips against mine. Her warm body pressed against mine, and I lost all sense of restraint. Soon, the only sound in the room was the rhythmic, heavy breathing of 2 people lost in the moment. Meanwhile, at the Taishan sect's outer training hall, Zhuang Beining was restless. She couldn't focus on her meditation. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the image of her mother being bullied by me. Beining, are you okay? Her friend, Yi Qijing, asked, noticing her distraction. Zhuang Beining forced a smile. I'm fine. Really? Are you sure? Maybe you should rest. You don't want to suffer a cultivation deviation, Yi Qijing warned. Zhuang Beining just shook her head, unable to explain the turmoil in her heart. Seeing she didn't want to talk, Yi Qijing changed the subject. By the way, Beining, didn't you say Lu Feng had those perfect grade pills? Yi Qijing asked. Zhuang Beining shook her head. I didn't go get them. That old man's talent is mediocre at best. He probably just got lucky. He might only have had those too. Yi Qijing wasn't so sure. I talked to the alchemists at Red Fire Peak. They say luck is part of it, but you need incredible skill to produce a perfect grade. They're already keeping an eye on him. Beining sneered. Then they're blind. I know him better than anyone. He's an old waste with one foot in the ground. Expecting him to have some grand alchemical insight is a joke. But he's been at it for years, Yi Qijing countered. He must have some secret. Beining looked at her friend suspiciously. Why do you care so much about that old trash? Yi Qijing looked away, her eyes flickering. I'm just curious how he did it. And if he can do it again. Don't bother, Beining snapped. He'll never have that kind of luck again. She stood up, unable to focus. I'm leaving. I can't clear my mind today. Beining reached her courtyard an hour later. Her face turned dark instantly. Shame and anger flared in her eyes. The sounds of heavy breathing and passion drifted from her mother's room. She wasn't a child. She knew exactly what was happening. What hurt most was the sound of her mother's voice. She wasn't resisting. She was submissive, willing. Beining felt a chill. Did her mother actually like that old waste? She wanted to burst in and stop it, but she was afraid of the fallout. So, she waited in the yard. She waited for an hour. Her face burned red. Is that old man a donkey? She hissed under her breath. How is he not done yet? She felt a surge of hatred for me. In her eyes, I was a beast, working her mother to exhaustion without a shred of pity. She stomped her foot and fled. She couldn't listen to another second. Inside the room, the storm finally settled. I lay there, gasping for air, holding Su Yuyao's naked body in my arms. Her skin was flushed, and honestly, so was mine. I hadn't realized how aggressive she could be. If I hadn't fixed my decaying body, that battle would have killed me on the spot. Yuyao was completely spent. After a few minutes, the reality of her behavior set in. She buried her face in my chest, trembling with shyness. I stroked her hair and chuckled. Now you're shy? A bit late for that, isn't it? Don't say it, she snapped, looking up with the blushing face of a young girl. I didn't tease her further. I just held her. Then, she started tracing circles on my chest. Brother Lu, why don't we become Dao companions? I froze. My heart went cold. After everything with Su Wanli, I had zero interest in another marriage. To me, Yuyao was a tool, a way to gain favorability points and level up my system. But I couldn't say that. I had to handle this carefully. I let out a long, heavy sigh. Yuyao, I want that more than anything. But I can't. Why? She sat up, completely ignoring her nudity. Her eyes were wide and hurt. Were you lying when you said you loved me? Was this all just a game? Her voice started to shake. I pulled her close, acting as fast as I could. What are you thinking? I'm not that kind of man. Then why won't you marry me? She whispered. I stroked her back, my voice dripping with fake sorrow. Yuyao, my lifespan is almost gone. I might only have a few years left. If I marry you now, I'm just ruining your life. People won't care about our love. They'll say you cursed your first husband, and then you cursed me. They'll call you a jinx. I can't let you be treated like that after I'm gone. The thought of you being insulted because of me, it breaks my heart. She looked at me, her eyes filling with tears. She thought I was rejecting her to protect her. I'm sorry, Brother Lu, she sobbed, leaning into me. I shouldn't have doubted you. I felt a wave of relief. She bought it, but I needed to make sure she never brought it up again. There's one more reason, I added, my voice grave. What is it? She asked. Your aunt, I said with a bitter smile. Su Wanli. I'm her ex-husband. If word gets out that I married her niece, her reputation will be destroyed. She's a nascent soul cultivator. If she gets angry, she won't just kill us, she'll kill Baining too. Yu Yao turned pale. The reality hit her like a physical blow. She knew her aunt's temper. One mistake could lead to a bloodbath. She looked at me with even more gratitude now. She thought I was the only one keeping her and her daughter safe. Ding. The system chimed in my head. Asterisk favorability increased. Current level, 60, asterisk. I smiled. 10 points of favorability meant 10 cultivation points. It was a good day's work. With the 10 points I just earned, I had banked 20 cultivation points in only a few hours. It was a good haul. I was itching to get back to my cave and use them to boost my strength, so after a few more minutes of comforting Yu Yao, I made my excuses. I told her I was worried about Zhuang Baining coming back and seeing us together, then I slipped out of the courtyard. I didn't even make it past the gate before I ran into Baining herself. Her face was flushed, but her eyes were locked on me with pure, concentrated hatred. I realized instantly that she had been standing there for a while. She had heard everything. She had heard exactly what I was doing with her mother. A wave of regret hit me. I wasn't sorry she heard us. I was angry at myself. I was a Foundation establishment cultivator. I should have sensed her the moment she arrived, but I had been so distracted by the gentle village of Yu Yao's embrace that I'd let my guard down completely. In this world, a single moment of carelessness could get you killed. I was just starting my path to immortality. I couldn't afford to be this sloppy again. Lu Feng, Baining hissed, her voice trembling with rage. One day, I will tear you into 1,000 pieces. Ding. The system chimed. Asterisk favorability decreased. Current level, -60, asterisk. According to the system, at -60, she was ready to kill me at any moment. She knew she wasn't strong enough to do it yet, so she just stood there venting her spite. I wasn't going to let her walk away thinking she could threaten me. I moved faster than her eyes could follow. Before she could blink, I was standing right in front of her, my hand clamped firmly around her throat. Her eyes bulged with terror. You should be grateful you have a good mother, I said, my voice ice cold. Otherwise, you'd have died 100 times already. She tried to scream, but I squeezed harder. She couldn't make a sound. I watched as her face turned blue and her consciousness began to fade. Just as she was about to pass out, I threw her to the ground like a piece of trash. Next time, open your eyes, I warned. Not everyone is as kind as I am. I wasn't being kind. I only spared her because I didn't want to tank my favorability with Yu Yao. She was currently my only source of points, and I couldn't risk my future for the sake of killing a brat. Baining lay in the dirt, trembling, too terrified to even look at me. The hatred was still there, buried deep, but she didn't dare say another word until I had flown away. As I soared toward the outskirts of Chongping town, I narrowed my eyes. I didn't look back, but I knew I was being followed. The tail had picked me up right outside Yu Yao's house. At first, I thought it was a coincidence, but after I changed directions 3 times and they stayed on me, I knew it was a hitman or a spy. I didn't turn around to fight. Instead, I flew straight toward my own cave dwelling. That was my territory. If I was going to deal with a tail, I wanted to do it where I had the advantage. I landed at the entrance of my cave, but the presence behind me suddenly went quiet. I frowned. Did I lose them, or were they waiting for an opening? Before I could figure it out, a figure blurred through the air and landed right in front of me. It wasn't the person who had been following me. Well, look who finally decided to come out, Old Man Lu. It was a young girl, maybe 16 or 17, with a pretty face and a very ugly attitude. My brow furrowed. I recognized her. This was Shun Shirwei, the 9th disciple of my ex-wife, Su Wanli. The system display popped up in my vision. Asterisk name, Shun Shirwei. Lifespan, 68 years. Realm, Chi Refinement Level 11. Favorability, -30, asterisk. What do you want? I asked, my voice flat. Shun Shirwei's face twisted in anger. She was a genius, the disciple of a nascent soul powerhouse, and everyone in the sect treated her like royalty. To her, I was just the trash her master had dumped. She suppressed her temper, though it clearly pained her. I'm here for the perfect grade chi condensation pills, she demanded. Hand over whatever you have left. I stared at her. I thought Su Wanli had sent her to harass me, but it turned out she was just greedy for my pills. I won't take them for free, she added, her chin tilting up arrogantly. If you give me a pill, I'll give you the chance to have dinner with me." I almost laughed. She wasn't asking. She was acting like she was granting me a divine favor. She thought that letting me sit at a table with her was worth a legendary pill. "Don't look so surprised," she sneered. "Life is hard now that my master divorced you, isn't it? You have to do sect missions now. You're probably terrified of dying out there. If you eat with me, people will think my master still cares about you. You can keep riding her coattails to stay safe. It's a good deal, right? It might even save your life." I didn't answer her. Instead, I asked a different question. "Were you the one attacking my cave's defensive formation for the last 2 days? You have the nerve to bring that up?" she snapped. "What kind of ridiculous formation did you put up? It's so stubborn I couldn't break through. You wasted 2 days of my time. You should give me extra pills just to compensate me for that." She was exactly like her master. No shame, no logic, just pure entitlement. "Are you finished?" I asked. "Just give me the pills and stop wasting time," she urged. I looked her in the eye and spoke one word. "Roll." She blinked, her expression blank for a second. "What?" I said. "Get lost." I repeated, louder this time. Shin Shirwei stood frozen, her mouth hanging open. She was the 9th young lady of Sunset Peak. No one had ever dared to tell her to get lost in her entire life. Everyone in the sect was terrified of offending Shin Shirwei. More importantly, they were terrified of the person backing her, my ex-wife, Su Wanli, a powerful nascent soul ancestor. Even before the divorce, the old Lu Feng wouldn't have dared to speak to her this way. But the man standing here now wasn't that coward. Seeing me actually tell her to get lost sent her into a blind rage. You actually dared to tell me to get lost?" she shrieked, her voice cracking with fury. "I'll make you pay for this." She didn't just scream. She reached for her quiver, intending to fire an arrow at me right then and there. I didn't give her the chance. My movement technique kicked in, and I blurred across the distance before she could even notch the string. Slap! I struck her across the face with everything I had. Shin Shirwei was a pampered genius, but she was only at the 11th level of chi condensation. She couldn't block a strike from a Foundation establishment cultivator. The force sent her spinning through the air. She flew 10 meters back and landed face first in the dirt, looking like a dog eating mud. When she rolled over, her pretty face was already swelling up like a pig's head. Wah! She clutched her cheek, tears streaming down her face. She looked pathetic, but her eyes were still full of venom. "I won't let you get away with this. I'm telling my master. I'll make her kill you." She scrambled to her feet and ran away as fast as she could. She was arrogant, but she wasn't stupid. She knew she was no match for me in a real fight. She had only come here to bully me because she thought the shadow of her master, the fairy of gloomy water, would protect her. Once she realized I didn't give a damn about her master's reputation, she had nothing left but empty threats. I didn't chase her. If I beat her at my own front door for trespassing, it was her own fault. But if I hunted her down and killed her, it would be a disaster. The sect laws against killing fellow disciples were strict, and Su Wanli would use it as the perfect excuse to execute me. I wasn't going to throw away my future of immortality just to finish off a brat like her. I turned my head toward a cluster of trees nearby. My expression went cold. "You followed me all the way from Chongping Town," I said calmly. "Are you going to show yourself, or do I have to drag you out?" As I spoke, a flying sword slid out of my sleeve, its aura locking onto the hidden presence. "Wait, please don't attack," a timid voice cried out. A young woman stepped out from the shadows. She looked about 17 or 18, wearing a soft pink dress. She had a delicate, slightly innocent face, but her figure was surprisingly well-developed. I couldn't help but notice she was just as well-endowed as Han Yuelon. She looked familiar, so I quickly pulled up her information through my system. Name: Yi Qijing. Age: 18. Lifespan: 60 years. Cultivation: 8th level chi condensation. Talent: mid-grade wood root. Favorability: 10. It clicked. Yi Qijing was Zhuang Beining's best friend. I had seen them together once or twice in the past. What surprised me was the favorability score. Zhuang Beining hated my guts, and I assumed she told her friends I was a monster. For Yi Qijing to have 10 points of favorability toward me was strange. She bowed deeply, her voice trembling. Junior Yi Qijing greets Senior Lu. "What do you want?" I asked flatly. She gathered her courage and looked up. Senior, I wish to purchase a perfect grade chi condensation pill from you. She looked terrified. She had clearly seen what I just did to Shinshirwei and was worried she'd get a slap to the face too. My eyes narrowed. I had underestimated how much trouble these perfect grade pills would cause. First Han Yuelon, then Lu Yuansheng, then Shinshirwei, and now this girl. If this many people knew, God knows who else was watching from the shadows. I made a mental note. I could never sell perfect grade pills inside the sect again. The 2 pills I sold to the Outward Affairs Hall were a stroke of luck. I lied. I don't have any more. Disappointment washed over her face, but she didn't leave. She gritted her teeth. Senior, an upper grade pill would work too. That gave me pause. Perfect grade pills caused riots, but upper grade pills were common enough not to draw deadly attention. I could easily produce them by just pulling the batch out of the furnace a little early, intentionally leaving small flaws. It would be safer and still bring in plenty of spirit stones. Yi Qijing could be my first test customer. The Outward Affairs Hall sells upper-grade pills for 10 spirit stones each, I said. Since you're a friend of Baining, I'll give you a discount. 9 stones per pill. How many do you want? She lowered her head, her voice barely a whisper. I don't have any spirit stones. I almost laughed again. First a crazy brat, now a girl with no money trying to buy premium medicine. Did I look like a charity? My gaze turned icy, and I let a sliver of my killing intent leak out. The pressure made her shiver, her face turning deathly pale. Senior Lu, please, she stammered. I don't have stones, but I am willing to become your concubine. I stared at her, genuinely shocked. If I were 30 years younger, a beautiful 18-year-old girl offering herself to me wouldn't be strange. Back then, I was an inner-sect genius. But now, I was an old man with a failing body. There had to be a catch. She felt my suspicious gaze and blushed furiously, but she didn't look away. If you provide me with upper-grade pills for my cultivation, I will be yours. I thought about it. The system showed she already had 10 favorability points. If I could get that number to 30, she would become another source of cultivation points for me. If something went wrong with my other leads, she would be a perfect backup to keep my progress steady. But I wasn't going to blindly agree. I needed to know why she was desperate enough to sell herself to an old man. This isn't the place to talk, I said, turning toward my cave. Follow me inside. I opened the defensive formation and walked in. She hesitated for a split second, knowing that once she stepped through that barrier, there was no turning back. She took a deep breath, her eyes filled with a sudden, sharp resolve, and followed me into the darkness. I took a seat on a wooden chair and waited for her to speak. I watched Yi Qijing walk into my cave and gave her a cold stare. I needed to know what was driving her. Give me a reason, I said flatly. Yi Qijing fell silent for a long moment. She took a deep breath, her eyes hardening with a dark, simmering intensity. I want revenge, she whispered. I gestured for her to continue. She began to recount a story of blood and betrayal. She was originally the daughter of a small cultivation family in the Great Zhou Kingdom. Her grandfather, the strongest in the family, had been at the peak of the foundation establishment stage. 10 years ago, he stumbled upon a rare earth spirit pill, a treasure that could increase the chance of forming a golden core by 10%. Her grandfather had invited a lifelong friend to guard him while he attempted to break through. But greed turned that friend into a monster. He murdered her grandfather during his seclusion, stole the pill, and then slaughtered her entire family. Over 300 people were wiped out in a single night. Her father died protecting her, buying her just enough time to escape. By pure luck, she ran into a Taishan sect elder recruiting disciples. Because of her decent talent, she was brought into the sect. She had begged the sect to help her seek justice, but they refused. Their rules were clear. Any grudges held before joining the sect were personal matters. The sect wouldn't lift a finger. Since then, she had lived for nothing but strength. She worked herself to the bone, and in just 10 years, she had reached the late 8th level of chi refinement. I was actually impressed. She only had a mediocre wood element root. In a place like the Taishan sect, people with her talent were a dime a dozen. Without special resources, reaching the 8th level in 10 years was nearly impossible. She must have suffered immensely to get this far. To be honest, I really envy Zhuang Baining. Yi Qijing said with a bitter smile. She has a senior who provides her with everything. Even with a low-grade route, she reached the peak of the 8th level at 18. I've wondered more than once. If you were my benefactor, with my effort, I'd be at the 12th level by now. She looked down at her hands. I know my fate. If I don't reach foundation establishment by 25, I'll likely never make it. My revenge will remain a dream. But I can't accept that. I see my father's face every time I close my eyes. I swore I would skin that demon alive. She looked at me then, her gaze firm yet pleading. Revenge was the only thing keeping her alive. I felt a flicker of sympathy, but only a flicker. The cultivation world was full of tragedies like hers. I wasn't a saint, and I wasn't about to hand over precious pills just because of a sad story. After what Su Wanli and Zhuang Beining put me through, my heart was cold. There are plenty of alchemists in the sect, I said after a long pause. Why me? Because I know from Beining that your lifespan is almost up, she said bluntly. You might only have 3 to 5 years left. If I become your concubine, I only have to serve you for that short time. With your pills, 3 years is enough to get me to the 12th level. When you pass away, I'll be free again, and I'll have the strength to try for foundation establishment. I raised an eyebrow, genuinely surprised. You're honest, at least. She bowed low, her forehead almost touching the floor. I know I'm not smart enough to play games with a senior like you. Please, take me as your concubine. She suddenly dropped to her knees and kowtowed. I waved my hand, using a burst of energy to lift her back to her feet. Get up, I said with a small smile. I don't care much for rules. If you're going to stay with me, there's no need for all this kneeling. Her face lit up with relief. Thank you, senior. Still calling me senior? I teased. Her face turned bright red. She lowered her head and stammered. Who? Husband. I laughed. I'm just joking. You don't need to call me that. Just call me master. Yes, master, she replied softly. Suddenly, a system notification chimed in my head. Her favorability had jumped to 20 points. I felt a surge of satisfaction. This was exactly why I took her in. Once she hit 30, she would become a steady source of cultivation points. Master, she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. Let me help you bathe and change. She knew the role she had accepted. I looked at her and smiled. Aren't you worried I'll go back on my word after this? She shook her head. You're much stronger than me. If you lied, there's nothing I could do anyway. I'm gambling on you. I didn't say anything else. I let her lead me to the hot spring inside my cave. I stripped down and waded into the steaming water, watching her as she stood by the edge. Her face was flushed, her expression a mix of shyness and resolve. Under my gaze, she slowly let her pink dress slide to the floor, followed by her undergarments. Her body was flawless. I felt a heat rising in me that had nothing to do with the water. She tried to cover herself instinctively, which only made her look more enticing. I beckoned her forward. She bit her lip and stepped into the spring. With a flick of my sleeve, I used my chi to pull her directly into my arms. She was stiff, her heart racing against my chest. Before she could say a word, I leaned in and silenced her with a kiss. My hands moved over her, and though she was tense at first, she soon softened, her eyes clouding with emotion. The transition from a young woman's nervousness to passion was seamless. It was a different experience entirely from my past cold encounters. After the storm had passed, Yi Qijing lay in my arms, her face still flushed with color. After a few minutes of quiet, she spoke up. Can I move into your cave permanently? She asked softly. No, I replied immediately. She looked at me, her large eyes filled with confusion. I couldn't tell her the truth. I was already working on Su Yuyao's favorability, which had reached 60 points. By next month, she would provide me with a massive payout of cultivation points. If she found out I had a concubine living in my cave, that progress would plummet to 0, or worse. I couldn't afford to lose that investment. Yi Qijing looked at me with confusion. To her, as my concubine, it was only natural that she should move in and serve me. I had to think fast. I let out a long, heavy sigh, acting as if I were burdened by a great weight. I told her that my lifespan was short, and that if the world found out she was my concubine, it would ruin her reputation. I asked her if she really wanted to be known as the woman who belonged to a dying man. She froze, stunned by my apparent selflessness. I kept the lie going, telling her that she should only visit when I needed her, keeping our relationship a secret so she could maintain her good name. She covered her mouth, looking at me with pure disbelief. In her eyes, I was a saint. She knew I was dying, yet here I was, supposedly sacrificing my own comfort just to protect her future. She lunged forward and hugged me tight. She swore on her Tao heart that she would be my loyal concubine until the day I died and would never betray me. I patted her back, pretending to be touched, but I was dying for a different reason. I wanted to laugh. With the system, my lifespan was only going to grow. By making that vow, she had just tied herself to me for the rest of her life. A notification pinged in my mind. Her favorability rose to 25 points. I was a bit disappointed it hadn't hit 30 yet, which was the threshold to convert points into cultivation progress, but I wasn't worried. 5 points would be easy to bridge soon. After another half hour of intimacy, I sent her away, telling her to return the next day for her batch of high-grade qi condensation pills. Once she was gone, I got to work. I immediately converted the 20 favorability points I had earned from Su Yuyao into cultivation points. Adding that to my remaining balance, I now had 22 points. I didn't spend them yet. I had dangerous sect missions looming over my head, specifically the ones involving a second-tier spirit beast and 3 demonic cultivators at Blood Demon Cliff. Demonic cultivators are unpredictable. Even if the mission said they were only at the early foundation establishment stage, I couldn't be careless. I planned to visit the Outward Affairs Hall the next morning to buy some defensive arrays and talismans. They might be average quality, but once I upgraded them with my system points, they would become lethal. To afford all this, I needed spirit stones. I pulled out my herbs and began refining. An hour later, the furnace clicked. 9 white, long-incised pills lay at the bottom. They were high-grade qi condensation pills. They weren't as perfect as the legendary grade, but they were exactly what I needed to sell without drawing too much suspicion. I didn't stop there. I pulled out 3 more sets of ingredients. I needed a massive haul for tomorrow's shopping spree. Meanwhile, over at Sunset Peak, a crash echoed through the cave dwelling. Su Wanli, my ex-wife, had just smashed a priceless porcelain vase. Her face was pale, her voice rasping with rage. Her eldest disciple, Gulingyue, stood trembling before her. The news had reached them. I had somehow broken through to the middle stage of foundation establishment. Su Wanli's eyes were cold, radiating a murderous intent. She had expected me to wither away and die after the divorce. She thought the pills I bought were a desperate, suicidal gamble. But instead, I had gained at least 10 more years of life. To her, those 10 years were a nightmare. It meant 10 more years of people whispering about how she abandoned the man who helped her reach the nascent soul stage. It meant 10 more years of being called an ungrateful wolf. Just then, her 9th disciple, Shun Shirwei, burst in with a swollen face and teary eyes. She started wailing, begging Su Wanli to kill me because I had refused to give her pills and had slapped her instead. Su Wanli didn't say a word. The air in the room turned freezing. Shin Shirwei was too stupid to realize what she had done wrong. Gulingyue, however, was terrified for her sister. Su Wanli wanted to sever all ties with me to protect her image. By going to me to beg for pills, Shin Shirwei had made a nascent soul ancestor's lineage look like pathetic beggars reaching out to a trash ex-husband. It was a massive embarrassment. Su Wanli barked an order for Shun Shirwei to get out and go to the reflection cliff. She was grounded indefinitely. Shin Shirwei left, sobbing and bitter, feeling like her teacher had betrayed her. She couldn't understand why she was being punished for being bullied. Gulingyue sighed in relief that the girl wasn't killed, then turned back to Su Wanli, waiting to see what she would do about me. Gulingyue stood by Su Wanli's side, her voice low and cautious. She asked if she should order the subordinates to handle things, implying they should just get rid of me. Su Wanli didn't answer. She just frowned. I knew exactly what she was thinking. If she could have killed me, she would have done it long ago. She wouldn't risk ruining her reputation as a nascent soul ancestor just to wipe out a bug like me. I wasn't worth the scandal. Still, she couldn't just let me be. To her, my breakthrough to the middle stage of foundation establishment was just a stroke of luck. But those extra 10 years of life I'd gained, that was a variable she couldn't accept. After a long silence, she finally spoke. She mentioned that her disciples and the outer sect members were headed to the Withered would see for a trial. If I somehow managed to finish my current sect missions, she wanted the Outward Affairs Hall to appoint me as the leader for that expedition. The reward for the mission would be a slot for the Land of Continuity 5 years from now. Guling Yue's heart skipped a beat when she heard that. The Withered would see was a dangerous trial ground. Usually, it required a peak Foundation establishment deacon to lead the group safely. Sending me, a mere middle-stage cultivator, was basically a death sentence for me and the disciples. But the reward was the real trap. The Land of Continuity held the Earth's Spirit Pill, which increased the chance of forming a golden core by 10%. Every Foundation establishment cultivator would kill for that chance. By giving me this reward, Su Wanli looked like she was being generous to her ex-husband. It was a brilliant, cruel move. Gulingyue couldn't help but admire her teacher's ruthlessness. While they plotted, I spent the night at my cauldron. I managed to refine 4 batches, resulting in 36 high-grade qi condensation pills. As soon as the sun rose, I headed straight for the Outward Affairs Hall. I found Han Yuelon at the sales counter. She gave me a playful smile and asked if I'd brought her more perfect-grade pills. I just shook my head and laughed. I told her I wasn't that lucky every day and handed over the bottles of high-grade medicine. Han Yuelon inspected them, her eyes widening slightly. She noticed the heat consistency. I had produced all 36 pills from just 3 batches. That meant every single pill I made was high-grade. She stared at me, noting how much my technique had improved. I just gave her a humble grin, claiming my recent breakthrough gave me a new understanding of the Tao of alchemy. She didn't pry. She paid me 360 low-grade spirit stones. I didn't let the money sit in my pocket. I went straight to the formation counter. I spent 150 stones on 2 second-tier formations, one for attack and a portable one for defense. I also stocked up on talismans. By the time I was done, my small fortune had dwindled to about a dozen stones. I needed those for emergencies. Back at my cave dwelling, Yi Qijing was waiting for me. She bowed deeply, calling me master. I led her inside and told her to wait in the hall while I went to the alchemy room. I spent 2 hours refining more pills for her. When I finally came out and handed her 2 bottles containing 18 high-grade pills, she was trembling. She didn't even check them. She just clutched them to her chest. These pills were the foundation for her revenge, bought with her own body. I told her not to be so nervous and promised I could make more once she finished these. She looked at me with pure gratitude. Without me, she had no hope of ever getting justice. I told her to get started, but she just stood there, looking confused. Then her face turned bright red. She whispered, asking if I could give her a day to recover because she was still in pain and didn't want to ruin my mood. I stared at her for a second, then realized what she thought I meant. I burst out laughing. I told her she had a dirty mind. I wasn't asking for sex. I wanted her to take the pills so I could help her refine them and boost her cultivation level. Her face went even redder, and she looked at her feet, twisting the hem of her skirt in embarrassment. We went into the meditation room. She swallowed the pills, and I sat behind her, channeling my gentle true qi into her body to help her process the energy. Below the 10th level of qi refinement, there are no real bottlenecks. It's just a matter of resources and how much spiritual energy your roots can handle. Most low-level cultivators take years because they're poor, but Yi Qijing had a solid foundation. In just half a day, we burned through 10 high-grade pills. Her breath hitched as her aura surged, successfully breaking through to the middle of the 9th level. She opened her eyes, feeling the power. Without my help, it would have taken her at least 3 years of bitter cultivation to reach this point. This was the power of having a backer in the cultivation world. I was her mountain now. A notification chimed in my head. Yi Qijing's favorability had jumped to 35 points. I couldn't help but smile. Things were finally looking up. Helping Yi Qijing refine those pills was a smart move. I gained another 10 favorability points, pushing her total over 30. That was the threshold. I didn't hesitate and extracted the rewards immediately. 30 cultivation points hit my account. Combined with what I had left from Sui Yao, I was sitting on 52 points. For a man in my position, that was a massive fortune. I couldn't wait to spend it. I sent Yi Qijing home to stabilize her new realm and turn my attention back to the system interface. My stats flickered in my vision. 30 years of life. Rank 2 alchemist. Wood and fire high-grade spiritual roots. I looked at my roots and felt a pang of disappointment. I had hoped 52 points would be enough to repair my damaged foundation, but the option was still grayed out. I sighed. I had to look elsewhere to boost my survival chances. My primary cultivation method, the Taishin Sutra, was too expensive to upgrade. I turned to my movement technique instead. The Shadowless Step was only rank 2 low grade. I spent 15 points instantly. A strange, profound vibration enveloped me as a flood of information crashed into my mind. The technique evolved. It was now rank 2 high grade. I closed my eyes, letting the new muscle memory sink in. An hour later, I felt like a new man. The mana cost stayed the same, but my speed had increased 5-fold. If I needed to run, very few people could catch me now, but running wasn't enough. I needed teeth. I looked at my blazing sword technique, another rank 2 low-grade skill. I dropped another 15 points without blinking. When the high-grade insights filled my brain, I almost laughed out loud. The power output had jumped 5 times over. Combined with my new speed, I could likely dominate anyone at my own level. I might even be able to hold my own against a late-stage foundation establishment cultivator. Still, it wasn't enough to face a golden core elder. I looked at the formations I had purchased earlier that day. A notification chimed. The system could upgrade my low-grade attack and defense formations for just 6 points. I gave the command. The energy hummed over the flags and discs for several minutes. The giant sword formation was now ranked 2 high-grade, capable of wounding a golden core cultivator. The Vajra formation could now block a full-strength strike from 1. Finally, I spent 10 more points to upgrade 5 attack talismans to high-grade. By the time I was finished, I only had 6 points left. I felt poor again, but my combat strength had skyrocketed. I finally had the confidence to face the world. The territory I lived in was known as the Tianlan region, a vast land spanning millions of miles. It was ruled by 7 great sects, 4 righteous and 3 demonic. The Taishin sect was one of the righteous 4. My mission took me to the border of the Chun Kingdom, a place where our territory met the lands of the Joyous Union sect. It was a dangerous, lawless frontier where light and shadow blurred. It took me 8 days of nonstop flying to reach my destination. I stood before the Black Mountain Market, a bustling hub built against the side of a massive mountain range. Cultivators swarmed the area, hunting spirit beasts and searching for rare herbs. Somewhere in those mountains lay Blood Demon Cliff, the place where I had to kill demonic cultivators to satisfy the sect's demands. The mission briefing was vague. It didn't give a specific location, so I had to find it myself. But I had another goal first. I needed to sell my perfect-grade chi condensation pills and buy ingredients for foundation leveling pills. I wandered the market for 3 hours, getting a feel for the local power dynamics. The Taishin sect technically ruled this place, but they were lax. They even allowed the Joyous Union sect to operate shops here. It was an open secret. The righteous and demonic sects traded resources behind the back of the public, chasing profits over ideology. This was perfect for me. If I sold my perfect pills to a Taishin shop, the elders might recognize my refining style. I couldn't take that risk. I eventually stopped in front of a shop called Qingshuang Pavilion. It was run by a family loyal to the Joyous Union sect. It was mid-sized, discreet, and exactly what I needed. I pulled my black cloak tight, masking my face and aura, and stepped inside. A young woman greeted me immediately. I blinked, momentarily stunned. The Joyous Union sect really didn't hide their nature. She was wearing nothing but a dress made of transparent, thin gauze. She bowed low, offering a respectful greeting to a senior, while leaving very little to the imagination. I cleared my throat, focused my mind, and prepared to do business. The girl's dress was little more than a few scraps of fabric. It barely covered her midriff, leaving her slender legs and thighs completely exposed. It was a blatant display of temptation, designed to break the focus of any visiting cultivator. I didn't let my eyes linger. I had a goal. I cleared my throat and kept my voice steady. I asked if they had any perfect-grade chi condensation pills for sale. The servant didn't flinch. She was clearly well-trained. She told me to wait while she fetched the manager. Another servant quickly stepped in, guiding me to a seating area and pouring a cup of spiritual tea. I didn't touch it. I sat in silence, my mind sharp and guarded. A few moments later, a mature woman approached. She wore the same translucent gauze, her movements calculated and full of charm. She was a foundation establishment cultivator, likely in the late stage. In any other sect, she would be a pillar of power, but here in the Joyous Union sect, she was using her body to lure customers. She smiled, her eyes flickering with surprise when I didn't stare at her. She leaned over me, intentionally showing off her figure as she offered to warm my tea. I ignored the display. I repeated my question. How much for a perfect-grade chi condensation pill? She seemed slightly deflated that her charms weren't working. She let her robe slip from her shoulder, exposing glowing, pale skin, but I remained unmoved. I could almost hear her cursing me in her head, thinking I was just some old man who had lost his virility. She finally dropped the act and got down to business. She told me a single pill cost 1,000 low-grade spirit stones. My heart skipped a beat. Back at the Taishan sect, the official price was 700, and even the specialized peaks only offered 800. If they sold for 1,000, their buying price would be excellent. I asked her if they were buying. She looked annoyed. I had tricked her into revealing the market price first, so I wouldn't get cheated. She offered 850 per pill. I pushed for more. We haggled until we settled on a price. 930 stones per pill if I sold 5 at once. Her eyes widened. Perfect-grade pills were rare, even for master alchemists. Finding 5 in one place was unheard of in a market like this. She doubted I actually had them until I flicked my wrist. 5 milky white pills appeared on the table, their pure fragrance filling the room. She reached for them, but I swept them back into my storage bag before she could touch them. I smiled under my hood. I needed the money first. She told me she had to consult her boss for that much gold and disappeared into the back. Once she was out of sight, her seductive smile vanished. She became cold and professional. She pressed a hidden switch on a wall, revealing a secret passage leading underground. In a hidden chamber below, a young girl sat on a blood-red jade platform. She was surrounded by a pool of blood filled with the pale, withered corpses of men. The manager bowed low, reporting that a righteous cultivator was selling 5 perfect-grade pills. The girl on the platform opened her eyes, glowing with a mix of lust and bloodlust. She told the manager to buy them, but to add something to the spirit stones. They would let me leave the market, then kill me and take everything back. The manager returned to the hall, her fake smile back in place. She handed me a storage bag containing 4,650 spirit stones. I checked the count. It was correct. I asked about the price of foundation leveling pills, but they were too expensive here, 400 stones each. I decided to pass and walked out. I didn't leave the market immediately. I had more pills to sell. I went to another shop owned by a different Joyous Union subsidiary and sold 5 more pills for 920 stones each. My pockets were getting heavy. But as I stepped out of the second shop, the hair on the back of my neck stood up. I felt a sharp, cold gaze tracking my movement. I had been too successful. I had shown too much wealth. I was being hunted. I felt frustrated. I had deliberately sold my pills in small batches of 5 to avoid drawing attention, but I was still being hunted. My plan to sell more perfect-grade chi condensation pills was dead. I couldn't even risk asking about blood demon teeth anymore. If my pursuers heard me, they'd surely set a trap at the source. I ducked into a random shop, bought a map of the Black Mountain Range's outer perimeter, and immediately left the market. As soon as I crossed the boundary, I felt them. 2 distinct signatures were trailing me. I didn't turn around. We were still too close to the market guards. I needed space. I looked at my map and headed straight into the dense woods of the Black Mountain Range. Big brother, the old man is heading into the mountains, a red-haired cultivator whispered to the man beside him. Should we keep going? The older man, whose face was gaunt and gloomy, had a golden glint in his eyes. Follow him. The brat was throwing around perfect-grade pills like candy. He definitely has more, and at the very least, he's carrying thousands of spirit stones. It's worth the risk. They slipped into the trees behind me. But they weren't the only ones. Moments after they vanished, the manager from the Green Frost Pavilion appeared at the forest edge. She wasn't smiling anymore. Behind her stood 2 Foundation establishment guards. Oomph! It seems others have their eyes on him too, she sneered. Fine. Let them fight. We'll be the fishermen waiting for the exhausted prey. I led them deep into the ancient forest until the trees were thick enough to hide a murder. Suddenly, the two men behind me accelerated, flanking me and cutting off my path. The older one was at the peak of the middle stage of foundation establishment. The red-haired one had just reached the middle stage. I looked at them with total indifference. Then, I turned my gaze toward a thicket further back. My friends from the Green Frost Pavilion, don't bother hiding. Come out. Green Frost Pavilion? What kind of nonsense are you talking about? The red-haired man barked. The older man frowned, his eyes scanning the empty woods where I was looking. He couldn't see anything, but his gut told him something was wrong. I ignored the red-haired man shouting and kept my eyes fixed on the shadows. Stop playing tricks, the red-haired man roared. Hand over the pills and the spirit stones now, and maybe I'll be merciful enough to leave your corpse in one piece. Shut up, the older man snapped, glaring at his partner. Get over here now. Brother, what are you waiting for? Let's just kill him. The older man looked like he wanted to slap him. Are you blind? There's a third party here. The red-haired man looked around, confused. I don't see anyone. Brother, you've grown cowardly. This old man is just trying to trick us. Watch me crush his head with one swing. He pulled a massive iron hammer from his storage bag and charged at me with a deafening roar. The older man's face turned pale. He knew his brother was an idiot, but he couldn't let him fight alone. He gritted his teeth, pulled out his own weapon, and followed. A cold light flashed in my eyes. If they wanted to die, I would oblige. I activated my shadow step. My body blurred and vanished. Boom! The heavy hammer slammed into the spot where I had been standing a second ago, shattering the earth and leaving a massive crater. Damn it! Don't run, you coward! The red-haired man laughed manically. Come out so I can turn you into paste. Wish. I appeared like a ghost at his left side. My long sword hummed with cold energy. With one clean stroke, I took his head. A fountain of blood sprayed from his neck as his head hit the dirt, his face still frozen in a mask of rage. Second brother, the older man screamed, his eyes turning blood red. I'll kill you. A terrifying killing intent locked onto me. He threw a pagoda-shaped treasure into the air. It expanded instantly, growing 2 stories high, and crashed down toward me like a falling mountain. I moved again, my body turning into a streak of light as I dodged the crushing weight. The older man was smarter than his brother. He didn't leave himself open. As soon as I vanished, he recalled the pagoda, letting it hover over his head like a shield. Wish. I lunged, my sword aiming straight for his throat. Just as the tip was about to pierce his skin, a golden light dropped from the pagoda, forming a barrier. My blade slammed into the light with a deafening crack. The pagoda shook violently, but the shield held. The old man tried to retreat to gain distance, but I didn't give him a chance to breathe. I pushed my shadow step to the limit, staying glued to him. I thrust again. He tried to trigger the pagoda's shield once more, but the treasure flickered and failed. It was exhausted. No, he shrieked, his eyes wide with terror. Just as my sword was about to end him, a streak of purple light shot out from the shadows, aiming for my ribs. The energy behind it was vicious. If I finished the kill, that light would tear through me. I didn't hesitate. I aborted the strike and twisted midair, my shadow step carrying me several meters away, just as the purple light hissed past. TSK, you actually dodged that. A cold, feminine voice echoed from the trees. 3 women stepped out, led by the manager of the Green Frost Pavilion. She had traded her seductive silk robes for a tight, black night-traveling suit that showed off every curve of her body. Thank you for the rescue, Fairy Lawn, the old man gasped, bowing low to the woman. She looked at him coldly. You know me? Who doesn't know Lan Meiju of the Green Frost Pavilion? The old man said, trying to flatter her. I even had the honor of spending a night with you at the Joyous Union Sex Rain Pavilion a few years ago. I shook my head in disbelief. These 2 brothers really were a pair of idiots. Lan Meiju was here to hunt a customer. That was the kind of dirty secret you take to the grave, you don't announce it to the world. By claiming he knew her, the old man had just signed his own death warrant. If word of this got out, the Green Frost Pavilion's business would be ruined. If the old man had pretended he didn't know Lan Meiju, he might have lived. By admitting he knew her, he signed his own death warrant. I hadn't expected her to have a history at the Rain Pavilion, though. That place was a brothel run by the Joyous Union sect, staffed by fallen female cultivators who used their secret arts to drain the essence of men for their own cultivation. It explained why Lan Meiju was so shamelessly seductive back at the shop. She had long ago forgotten the meaning of the word modesty. Lan Meiju's eyes flashed with a murderous chill the moment the old man finished speaking. Then, just as quickly, the coldness melted into a flirtatious smile. "So, you were one of my old patrons?" she chirped, her voice dripping with honey. "Why didn't you say so sooner? If I'd known, I would have stepped in earlier. Your brother wouldn't have had to die." The old man let out a strained, relieved laugh. "I didn't realize it was you, Fairy Lawn. If I had, I would have identified myself immediately. Please, let me come over. This man is dangerous. I'm afraid he'll strike again if I stay here." "Come here then," she said softly. "I might not be able to save you in time if you stay there." The old man hurried toward her, bowing his head. "Thank you for saving my life, Fairy Lawn." His words cut off into a wet gasp. His eyes bulged in disbelief. Lan Meiju's expression had turned freezing cold. Her hand, sharp as a blade, had punched straight through his chest. She gripped his heart, ripped it out, and held it in front of his dying eyes before crushing it into a bloody pulp. As his body slumped to the ground, his pagoda treasure fell. Lan Meiju caught it and casually tucked it into her storage bag. Then, she turned her icy gaze toward me. "If you kill yourself now, I'll leave your body in one piece," she said. I tightened my grip on my sword, my face expressionless. "I have no intention of doing that." "Then die." Lan Meiju turned into a blur of blue light, charging straight at me. The two women behind her, both at the late stage of foundation establishment, moved at the same time, flanking me from both sides. I triggered my shadow step, turning into a flicker of dark light and vanishing from the spot. "Careful. This old man is incredibly fast," Lan Meiju shouted to her companions. Before her warning even finished, I appeared behind the woman on the left. My sword lunged for her spine. Her face went pale with terror, and she frantically slapped a talisman. A heavy, golden bell phantom manifested around her with a deep boom. My blade struck the golden shield and bounced off. I didn't waste time. I retreated instantly, sliding back just as Lan Meiju's attack whistled through the space I had occupied a second ago. "Old man, stop hiding if you have the guts," Lan Meiju shrieked. I ignored her. I wasn't an idiot. I was only at the middle stage, and I was facing 3 late-stage cultivators. A head-on fight was suicide unless I used the high-level arrays and talismans I'd spent my precious system points on. I didn't want to waste those unless I had to. My shadow step and blazing sword technique would be enough if I played this right. I kept moving, circling them like a ghost. I darted in for quick strikes and vanished before they could counter. It was driving them insane. "What do we do?" one of the women hissed. "We can't just keep chasing him like this." Lan Meiju didn't answer. Her face was dark with frustration. She had expected an easy kill, but my speed was beyond her calculations. I was fighting like an old fox, refusing to engage directly and using my mobility to control the battlefield. More importantly, I was slowly positioning myself to block their escape routes. I wasn't just surviving, I was hunting them. Deep down, Lan Meiju was starting to feel a flicker of unease. She finally called out, "Old gentleman, it seems we've reached a stalemate. We can't catch you, but you can't kill 3 late-stage cultivators either. How about a deal? Keep the spirit stones you took from the shop. Just give us that movement technique, and we'll let you go." She was greedy. She realized that my movement technique allowed a middle-stage cultivator to outpace late-stage ones. It had to be at least a mid-grade rank 2 manual, worth over 10,000 spirit stones. I just laughed. It was a dry, mocking sound that echoed through the trees. Did she really think I was that naive? Her face contorted with rage. "Don't think we're afraid of you. That technique must drain a massive amount of chi. Once you run dry, you're a dead man." I didn't respond. I just kept circling, waiting for a crack in their formation. After half an hour, I found it. The woman I'd been harassing was getting impatient. Her defensive movements were becoming sloppy and reactive. I focused all my feints on her, conditioning her to expect nothing but light probes. Then, she left her left side wide open. I pushed my shadow step to its absolute limit. The air hissed as I closed the gap in a heartbeat, pouring every drop of my chi into my sword. The blade hummed with a lethal vibration. She thought it was just another poke. She lazily swung her sword to parry, but this time, I wasn't testing her. My blade slammed into hers with bone-shattering force, sending her weapon flying. "No!" she screamed, realizing the trap too late. Before she could circulate her chi for a shield, my sword drove straight through her chest. Lan Meiju and the other survivor reacted instantly. They didn't even look at their dying comrade. They launched their treasures at me, hoping to catch me while I was finishing the kill. But I was already gone, my shadow step pulling me back into the darkness of the trees. "Damn it!" Lan Meiju cursed, her voice trembling with fury as she barked a new order to her last remaining partner. "I'll handle the defense." Lan Meiju barked at her last surviving companion. "Go see if she can be saved." The other cultivator hesitated for a second. He looked at the mangled body of their comrade, then back at me. Finally, he nodded and rushed toward the fallen woman. It was a fatal mistake. He had just given me the opening I needed. I didn't hesitate. I channeled every bit of my energy into the blazing sword art. In an instant, a 10-foot-long blade of pure fire condensed in front of me, radiating intense heat. "Go!" I roared, swinging the flaming edge down toward Lan Meiju and her partner. "You fell for it." Lan Meiju's voice rang out, filled with a cold, triumphant sneer. She didn't even try to help her companion. Instead, a flash of green light flickered from her boots. In the blink of an eye, she vanished from her spot, leaving the other man to face my attack alone. She wasn't running away. She was closing the distance between us. I tried to activate my shadow step to pull back, but I was stuck. To launch the blazing sword art, I'd had to plant my feet for a split second. That tiny window was all she needed. She flicked her wrist, tossing a purple-black bead toward me. As it got close, 2 streaks of thick, violet mist shot out and coiled around my legs like hungry snakes. My heart sank. My legs felt like they were anchored by 10,000 pounds of iron. I couldn't move an inch. "It's useless," Lan Meiju laughed, stopping just a few feet away. "This is the purple stone smoke, a second-grade low-rank spiritual tool. It's designed specifically to trap cultivators who rely on movement techniques. Even if you were at the peak of the foundation establishment stage, you'd be stuck here like you're in a swamp. Even a golden core expert would be slowed down tenfold." She looked at me like a butcher looks at a lamb. "You're just fish on my chopping block now." My mind raced. Spiritual tools were ranked from 1st to 3rd grade, with anything higher being a spirit treasure reserved for nascent soul masters. Even a basic 1st-grade tool cost thousands of spirit stones. A 2nd-grade tool like hers was worth over 10,000. In all my years of cultivation, the best thing I owned was my Azure Firmament Sword, a 1st-grade high-rank tool I'd looted from a corpse years ago. I never expected a disciple like her to carry something so expensive and specialized. I tried to circulate my chi to break the mist, but it was like pushing against a mountain. The purple smoke remained rock solid. Behind her, my flaming sword finally connected. Her companion didn't even have time to scream before the fire turned him into ash. Lan Meiju didn't even flinch. She didn't care that her teammate was dead. "You're ruthless," I said, my voice low. "You used your own partner's life just to get one shot at me." "His death bought me a high-level movement technique," she replied coldly. "He should feel honored to be useful." I looked at her and started to chuckle. Her expression shifted instantly, turning into a mask of rage. She didn't want to hear another word. She lunged forward, her hand curved into a deadly claw aimed straight for my heart. Just as her fingers were about to pierce my chest, a brilliant golden light erupted from my skin. The light solidified into a translucent barrier, the diamond array, a 2nd-grade high-rank defensive formation I had prepared. Her claw slammed into the shield. Instead of breaking through, she was hit by a massive wave of reflected energy. The impact sent her stumbling back dozens of steps, her face pale with shock. This was my chance. I ignored the weight on my legs and pushed the blazing sword art again. Another massive blade of fire formed, swiping down at her with terrifying speed. If I killed her, the purple stone smoke would lose its master and release me. Lan Meiju barely regained her balance before the fire was upon her. She realized she couldn't dodge. With a frantic motion, she pulled a small umbrella from her storage bag. She poured her chi into it, and the tool expanded instantly, growing into a massive, shimmering glass shield. My flaming sword slammed into the umbrella with a deafening explosion. The attack that had just vaporized a Foundation establishment cultivator barely made the glass surface ripple. Another one? I hissed. It was a defensive spiritual tool, at least first-grade high rank, maybe higher. Between the smoke and this umbrella, she was armed to the teeth. Were all the disciples of the Joyous Union sect this rich? Lan Meiju peered from behind her glazed umbrella, her eyes mocking. Your legs are bound, and my shield is impenetrable. What else do you have, Lu Feng? I didn't answer. I just gritted my teeth and poured every remaining drop of my chi into the azure firmament sword. The flaming blade grew brighter and hotter, pressing down on the umbrella with everything I had. I pushed until my veins felt like they were bursting, but the glazed umbrella stayed as steady as a rock. I was trapped, and my clock was running out. I was at a massive disadvantage. Lan Meiju's laughter was shrill and mocking. This glazed umbrella is a second-grade, mid-rank defensive tool. It can withstand attacks from cultivators far stronger than you. Did you really think a pathetic Foundation establishment mid-stage weakling could break it? I stared at her, stunned. Was every woman in the Joyous Union sect this loaded? First, she pulled out the purple stone smoke, a second-grade low-rank tool. Now, she had a mid-rank defensive treasure. Defensive tools were notoriously expensive, often costing several times more than offensive ones. A piece like that was worth at least 30,000 spirit stones. Her wealth was enough to make anyone jealous. I let out a frustrated sigh. I had hoped to end this quickly with my movement techniques and the blazing sword art, but I had underestimated how rich a late-stage cultivator could be. It was time to stop holding back. I reached into my robe and pulled out a purple talisman etched with silver lightning patterns. This was the Thunderclap talisman, an item I had upgraded using my system points. I didn't hesitate. I flooded the paper with my chi. The talisman began to hum, silver electricity dancing across its surface. It floated into the air before me, the arcs of lightning growing larger and more violent. The very air began to vibrate with the raw power of a thunderstorm. Lan Meiju flinched, a flicker of worry crossing her face. But she quickly regained her arrogance. The glazed umbrella can hold off a golden core master for a few breaths. You think a scrap of paper can beat that? I didn't argue. I simply pointed my finger at her. A bolt of silver lightning shrieked through the air, slamming into the glass shield. The umbrella, which hadn't budged against my flames, suddenly shuddered violently. Before she could react, a second bolt struck the same spot. Crack! Spiderweb fractures raced across the shimmering surface. Impossible! Lan Meiju screamed. She desperately poured her chi into the handle, trying to force the cracks to heal, but it was useless. The talisman above me detonated, releasing one final, massive pillar of lightning. It hit the umbrella with a deafening explosion. The treasure shattered instantly, shrinking back into a tiny, broken frame that hit the dirt. The leftover energy from the blast slammed directly into Lan Meiju's chest. She coughed up a spray of blood and collapsed, unconscious. With her out of the picture, the purple stone smoke lost its power. The mist binding my legs vanished, condensing back into a small purple orb. I snatched it out of the air before it could hit the ground. I moved fast. I blurred across the battlefield, stripping the storage bags and fallen weapons from the red-haired man, the old vulture, and the two female disciples I'd killed earlier. Finally, I grabbed the broken glazed umbrella and stood over Lan Meiju. I looked at her pale face, considering my options. I didn't kill her. Not yet. She was far too valuable to waste. I slung her over my shoulder and vanished into the woods. I traveled deep into the Black Mountain Range until I found a hidden natural cave. It was occupied by a first-grade great python, but I cleared the beast out in seconds. After setting up a few concealment and defense arrays at the entrance, I finally sat down to count my loot. The red-haired guy's hammer was trash, just a first-grade low-rank tool. The old man's pagoda was better, a high-rank defensive tool that would fetch a decent price. Between their bags, I found about 200 low-grade spirit stones. A small win. I was disappointed by the two female disciples who had been with Lan Meiju. I expected them to be rich, but they only had a few high-rank tools and some second-grade talismans. Their combined cash was less than 1,000 spirit stones. At least they had 10 mid-grade chi recovery pills. Then, I opened Lan Meiju's bag. My jaw nearly hit the floor. 5,000 spirit stones in cash. Several second-grade, mid-rank talismans. 2 full bottles of mid-grade pills and 5 high-grade ones. Every single item in her bag was second-grade. When I added the value of the purple stone smoke and the glazed umbrella, her total net worth exceeded 100,000 spirit stones. I looked at her unconscious body, genuinely curious. She wasn't much stronger than her peers. How was she this rich? Was the business of the Joyous Union sect really that profitable, or had she been embezzling from her shop? I didn't dwell on it. I spent the next 3 hours forcefully erasing her soul imprints from the purple orb and the umbrella, refining them until they were mine. I let out a long breath, feeling the new connection to the tools. My combat power had just jumped to a whole new level. It was worth the cost of using the Thunderclap talisman and a charge of my defensive array. I pulled out my diamond array disc. The runes on it were dimming. That was the downside of portable arrays. They had a limited number of uses. This one only had 2 charges left before it turned into scrap metal. Magic tools were much more reliable since they lasted forever unless they were physically destroyed. That was why they were so expensive. I held the glazed umbrella, hoping for a system prompt to upgrade it further. Silence. I tried the purple stone smoke. Still nothing. I guess 6 cultivation points isn't enough to upgrade a mid-rank second-grade tool, I muttered. It made sense. I had upgraded my array from low rank to high rank for only 3 points, but the higher the quality, the steeper the price. I needed more points, and I needed them fast. I looked back at Lan Meiju. It was time to wake her up. I sighed, looking at my status. I was still short on cultivation points. If I wanted to get stronger, I needed to find more women and raise their favorability. Just as the thought crossed my mind, a low groan came from the floor. Lan Meiju was finally waking up. I looked down at her, but immediately shook my head. Even though I was desperate for points, I had standards. A woman from the Joyous Union sect who had spent her life as a professional entertainer was far too dirty for my taste. I didn't want to catch whatever she was carrying. Her eyes fluttered open, filled with confusion. Then, the memory of our fight hit her. She lunged, instinctively trying to circulate her chi to attack me, but her face instantly turned pale. Her dantian was sealed tight. She tried again, panic rising in her chest, but she couldn't move a single drop of spiritual energy. Why stop now? Keep trying, I said, leaning back with a cold smile. Hearing my voice, the despair in her eyes shifted into something else, calculation. She realized I hadn't killed her yet. To her, that meant she still had value. If she had value, she had a chance to live. Her expression shifted instantly. She put on a charming, sultry smile and let out a soft, delicate whimper. Big brother, I was wrong, she cooed, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. I shouldn't have attacked you. Please, just let me go. I promise I'll use every skill I've ever learned to serve you. I'll make you feel like you've ascended to heaven. She licked her lips provocatively, her eyes wandering down toward my waist. She was laying the seduction on thick. I didn't say a word. I just reached out and slapped her across the face. The sound echoed through the room. Lan Meiju clutched her cheek, staring at me in total disbelief. She couldn't understand how a man could resist her charms so violently. If you don't want to die, stop acting like a cheap tramp, I spat. Her eyes flared with anger, and for a second, I thought she might scream at me. But she looked into my eyes, saw the ice-cold indifference there, and shivered. She lowered her head, pulling back her seductive act immediately. Do you know where Blood Demon Cliff is? I asked. That was the only reason she was still breathing. I had a map of the Black Mountain Range, but it didn't mark that specific location. As the manager of a shop in the Black Mountain Market, she had to know the local terrain better than anyone. Her eyes flickered with a sudden spark of cunning. I can tell you where it is, she said, her voice regaining some confidence. But you have to swear a Dao Heart oath to let me go afterward. Are you threatening me? My gaze turned freezing. She let out a cold laugh. It's not a threat. It's a trade. Blood Demon Cliff is hidden deep. Very few people in the market know its exact location, and I happen to be one of them. Without me, you could search these mountains for 20 years and never find it. I frowned. I hadn't expected the place to be that well hidden. I cursed the idiots back at the Taishan sect who issued the mission. Why couldn't they just mark the location on the scroll? Then again, if it were easy to find, they wouldn't have made it a mission. They would have just sent an elder to wipe it out. The 3 Foundation establishment demon cultivators there were clearly beneath a golden core elder's notice, so they left the tedious tracking to people like me. Have you made up your mind? Lan Meiju sneered. I looked at her and smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. I think you've misunderstood your current situation, I said. Before she could speak, a flash of sword light cut through the air. She didn't even have time to blink before the pain hit her. She screamed, a high-pitched, agonizing wail, as she looked down at her left arm. Her hand was gone. Blood sprayed across the floor, and the raw, bone-deep agony made her convulse. That was your left hand, I said, my voice flat and emotionless. In 3 breaths, I'll take the right one. If you still don't talk, I'll take your feet, then your legs, then your nose, your eyes, and your ears. I will turn you into a human stump. Her screaming stopped abruptly as she stared at me in pure terror. And if you still won't talk after that, I continued, I'll use a soul extraction technique. I'll pull your spirit out and whip it day and night. You won't be able to live, and I won't let you die. She looked at me like I was a monster. I was supposed to be a righteous cultivator, but I sounded more demonic than any demon she had ever met. 3 breaths are up, I said. She was still in shock, her mouth hanging open. I didn't hesitate. I drew my sword again. Another flash of light, and her right hand hit the dirt, joining the other one. Devil! You're a devil, she shrieked, her face contorted with hatred and pain. I didn't react to her insults. I just raised my sword again. 3 more breaths, and I take the left leg. The hatred in her eyes vanished instantly, replaced by sheer, unadulterated fear. She didn't wait a second longer. She started talking, spilling every detail about Blood Demon Cliff. She even described the landmarks and hidden paths, terrified that I might get lost and come back to finish the job. A day later, I stood at the edge of a valley in the Black Mountain Range, surrounded by thick, purple poisonous miasma. According to Lan Meiju, the cliff was hidden deep within this valley. But the location wasn't the only secret she gave up. The 3 demon cultivators inside weren't just random thugs. They were brothers who specialized in a combined battle formation. Even though they were only at the peak of the early foundation stage, their combined strength could rival a late-stage cultivator. It was a total death trap. I cursed those Taishan sect elders again. They hadn't included a single word about the formation in the mission brief. If I hadn't run into Lan Meiju and tortured the truth out of her, I would have walked right into an ambush. I took a deep breath, adjusted my gear, and stepped into the mist. I had the information. Now, I just had to survive the brothers. I reached into Lan Meiju's storage bag and pulled out a detoxification pill. I swallowed it dry, waiting for the medicine to kick in before I dared to step into that thick, purple poison cloud. Using the map I'd tortured out of her, I navigated the haze. It took me over 6 hours of careful trekking, but I finally broke through the mist and entered a hidden canyon. The smell hit me first. It was a thick, metallic stench of blood that made my stomach churn. I followed the scent deeper into the canyon until I found it. A mountain of corpses. Men, women, elderly, and children. They were piled high like discarded trash. Most were missing limbs. Some had gaping holes in their chests where their hearts and organs had been ripped out. The children were the worst. Their tiny bodies were hollowed out, and none of them showed any signs of being cultivators. They were just innocent civilians. I frowned. I'd seen plenty of blood in my years of cultivating, but something was wrong here. Despite the horrific wounds and the overwhelming smell, there wasn't a single drop of blood on the ground. Thousands of bodies, yet the earth was dry. Where did all the blood go? Big brother, it looks like we have a guest. A cold, mocking laugh echoed through the canyon. A middle-aged man in blood-red robes stepped out from the shadows ahead of me. The moment my eyes locked onto him, 2 streaks of crimson light shot out from beneath the pile of corpses. They moved with terrifying speed, far faster than any normal early-stage foundation cultivator. I didn't panic. I triggered my shadow step, my body blurring as I dodged the projectiles by a hair's breadth. He's a sharp one, isn't he, brothers? Another voice, thin and bone-chilling, rose from the pile of bodies. An old man draped in red robes pushed aside a stack of corpses and stood up. I felt a chill. I had been scanning the area, yet I hadn't sensed his presence at all. How could a mere early-stage cultivator mask his aura so perfectly? Before I could process that, a third figure appeared. He was a pale, ugly youth, also dressed in red. He stared at me with predatory greed, licking his lips. Big brother, second brother, this kid is in the middle stage of foundation establishment, the youth rasped. His organs will be much chewier than those brats. You guys take the meat, but don't fight me for the innards. I want to eat my fill. The old man laughed loudly. Don't worry, third brother. We don't care for the guts. He's all yours. They looked at me like I was a choice cut of steak at a butcher shop. I've dealt with many demonic cultivators, but most just want to drain your blood or soul to increase their power. Eating human flesh was useless for cultivation. It actually slowed you down because of the impurities. These three weren't doing this for power. They were doing it for the sick, twisted pleasure of the taste. You three are absolute animals, I said, my voice dropping to a deadly chill. Jia, keep barking, kid, the old man sneered, swallowing hard as if he were already tasting me. Once we slice your meat off piece by piece and drop them into the frying pan, you won't be so loud. The middle-aged brother closed his eyes, a look of ecstasy on his face. No, we have to make him feel true terror first. When they're terrified, the energy flows into the muscles. That's when the meat is most flavorful. I let out a cold laugh and asked, You really think you've already won? They just snickered, and I knew what they were thinking. Even though they were only at the peak of the early stage, their combined formation was legendary. Being brothers meant they acted as one mind. They were confident they could take down a late-stage cultivator, let alone someone like me. I decided not to give them the chance. If I let them link up, I'd be in trouble. I had to break the chain before it formed. Let's see what you animals are actually worth, I growled. I moved instantly. I pushed my shadow step to its absolute limit, turning into a streak of dark light. I didn't go for the old man or the leader. I lunged straight for the youngest one, the weakest link. The youth saw me coming. He tried to retreat, his eyes widening in shock at my speed, but he wasn't fast enough. Not even close. A flash of cold steel crossed his vision. His world tilted. For a split second, he saw a headless body standing in the valley, dressed in familiar red robes. That body looks familiar, he thought. Wait, is that mine? That was the last thing he ever thought before his head hit the dirt. One down. The blood-robed old man and the middle-aged brother stared at the headless corpse, their eyes nearly bursting with rage. Their fury was a physical weight in the air, but beneath that anger, I saw it. Pure, unfiltered terror. They had been so arrogant because of their combined formation. That was the only reason they dared to look down on a middle-stage foundation establishment cultivator like me. But now, their third brother was a cooling corpse. Without him, the formation was broken. They were just two ordinary early-stage cultivators. Against me? They didn't stand a chance. They locked eyes for a split second. I didn't need to be a mind reader to know what they were thinking. They turned and bolted in opposite directions. I let out a cold snort. My shadow step was already active. I blurred across the ground, closing the distance to the old man in a heartbeat. He looked up, his face pale as I materialized directly in his path. Fellow Taoist, wait, he shrieked, his voice cracking. I'll give you everything. My life savings, my treasures, they're all yours. I didn't offer him a single word. My blade flashed, sealing his throat in one clean stroke. With a flick of my wrist, I snatched the 2 storage bags hanging from his waist. I looked down at his twitching body and spat on the ground. Idiot. Once you're dead, your things are mine anyway. I didn't waste time. I pushed my speed again, chasing after the middle-aged brother who had managed to put some distance between us. I caught him at the very edge of the canyon. One swing, and his head spun into the air. His headless body actually kept running for dozens of meters, blood spraying like a fountain, before it finally wobbled and collapsed. I retrieved his storage bag and walked back to the first youth's body to claim the final one. I opened them up, expecting a windfall, but a wave of disappointment hit me. Aside from some spirit stones, there wasn't much of value. They didn't even have any pills to help with foundation establishment cultivation. However, in the old man's bag, I found 3 ancient jade slips. My interest piqued. The first slip contained a high-grade rank 2 cultivation technique. It was the very art the 3 brothers practiced. The combined formation was actually a sub-ability of the technique itself. As a practitioner's mastery grew, their minds would become linked. If hundreds or thousands of people practiced this together, they could theoretically kill enemies an entire realm above them. It was a terrifying tool for a large sect, but for a lone cultivator like me, it was useless. I tossed it into the depths of my bag. I picked up the second slip, and my brow furrowed immediately. This was a recipe for something called a blood essence pill. It was designed to boost a cultivator's strength, but the ingredients weren't herbs or minerals. It required human blood. The more blood used, the better the pill. But the truly twisted part was that it required the blood of mortals. It took the blood of 10 cultivators to match the energy provided by a single ordinary human. There was no limit to its grade, either. If you slaughtered enough people, you could theoretically make a pill that would help a nascent soul expert. The cost was the side effect. It turned the user into a literal beast that craved human flesh, a hunger that couldn't be cured. I took a deep breath, feeling a chill. It literally turns men into monsters. Now I knew why this canyon was filled with dry corpses, but not a single drop of blood. These brothers had been harvesting everyone to refine these pills. If a demonic cultivator got their hands on this, they'd go insane with joy. They wouldn't care about the side effects at all. I stashed the slip away. I had no intention of ever making such a thing, but a question nagged at me. If they were making these pills, where were they? There wasn't a single one in their bags. Had they eaten them all, or were they hidden in their lair? I looked toward the canyon. When I was chasing the old man, I'd spotted the entrance to a hidden cave dwelling. I started toward it, but stopped to check the final jade slip first. My eyes lit up instantly. This was a prize. It was a rank 2 high-grade divine ability called the God-hiding technique. If mastered, even a cultivator an entire realm higher than me would find it nearly impossible to detect my presence. The most important thing about the God-hiding technique was that it had no cultivation requirements. It only demanded a certain level of natural talent. Luckily, I met the criteria. For a cautious man like me, this technique was priceless. It also explained why I hadn't sensed the old man hiding under the mountain of corpses earlier. He had clearly mastered this skill to evade my perception. His 2 brothers, however, hadn't been so lucky or talented. I looked down at the headless bodies of the 3 brothers, a strange feeling gnawing at my gut. These were just 3 cultivators at the early stage of foundation establishment. How did they get their hands on 2 high-grade rank 2 treasures? The blood essence pill formula alone was worth a fortune. Even golden core or nascent soul experts would kill for it. Where did 3 nobodies get such things? I started to regret my efficiency. If I had known they carried such treasures, I wouldn't have killed them so quickly. I should have left one alive to squeeze for information. I sighed. It was too late for that now. My only hope was that their hidden cave held some answers. I entered the dwelling, but my disappointment only grew. The place was a nightmare. The floor was covered in severed limbs and chunks of human flesh. I found 4 sets of basic living tools, all showing signs of heavy use. Aside from that, there was nothing. Not a single blood essence pill. It made no sense. Whether you followed the righteous path or the demonic path, you always kept your best pills on you to aid your cultivation. Why were they completely empty-handed? Something felt very wrong. I tore the cave apart, searching every corner, but I came up empty. I walked out of the cave, ready to leave this place behind. But then I froze. A detail from the cave flashed through my mind. 4 sets of tools. There were only 3 brothers, yet there were 4 sets of equipment, all of them used. There was a 4th person. My survival instinct screamed. I immediately activated my Vajra array for protection and pushed my divine sense to the limit. I scanned the entire area, but I found nothing. This left me with a dilemma. If there was a 4th person and they were staying hidden, it meant they were likely weaker than me and afraid to fight. The bad news was that they probably knew the god-hiding technique too. If I left now, I'd be leaving a loose thread. In my years of cultivating, I had learned one rule: always pull the grass out by the roots. Leaving a survivor would keep me up at night. I turned into a streak of light and flew out of the canyon. I wanted to give them the chance to come out. I didn't go far, though. I hid nearby, keeping my divine sense locked on the canyon. I wasn't worried about the person being stronger than me. If they were, the three brothers would have used that person's name to threaten me before they died. Since they didn't, the fourth person had to be the weakest of the group. I waited. 1 day passed. Then 2. By the 3rd day, the canyon remained silent. I started to doubt myself. Maybe the extra tools were just spares? I hesitated, but decided to give it 2 more days. The 4th day was quiet. The 5th day was the same. I let out a soft sigh, thinking I was just being paranoid. I shook my head and turned to leave. Suddenly, I heard it. A tiny sound came from the mountain of corpses. It was so faint it was almost non-existent, but I was listening for it. "Found you," I whispered, a hunter's smile crossing my face. After 5 days of waiting, the 4th person finally slipped up. I was surprised to realize they were hiding deep inside the pile of bodies. Because the old man had jumped out from there earlier, I hadn't thought someone else would still be burrowed inside. My initial scan had only brushed the surface. I didn't rush in. The pile was massive, and I didn't know what traps were waiting inside. If I attacked blindly and they used the god-hiding technique again, I might lose them for good. I waited for them to come to me. Since they had moved, it meant they couldn't hold out much longer. An hour later, the pile shifted again. This time, it wasn't a subtle sound. Someone was carefully crawling out. A boy, looking no older than 14 or 15, emerged from the rot and decay. My eyes locked onto him instantly. I didn't hesitate. I triggered the system to scan his information immediately. I immediately triggered the system to scan the boy's information. His name was Shueisha. He was 15 years old, but his lifespan was already 70 years. He was at the peak of the 12th level of chi condensation. His cultivation technique was listed as unknown, but it was his aptitude that made my breath hitch. Evil Shura blood physique. His favorability toward me was -100. I stared at the readout, my eyes narrowing. Cultivators with special physiques were 1 in 10,000. In my entire life, I had only known one person who possessed one, my ex-wife, Su Wanli. She had the mystical water spirit physique. Once it awakened, her cultivation speed became terrifying. She reached the peak of the nascent soul stage in just a few decades. If given more time, she could have reached the soul transformation stage. I never expected to find another special physique here. But based on the name alone, this boy was a demonic genius in the making. Shueisha crawled out from the mountain of corpses and scanned the area. When he saw no immediate danger, his eyes turned predatory, like a wild beast. He lunged at the pile of rotting flesh and began to eat. He tore into the corpses, devouring blood and meat with a hunger that looked like pure insanity. I watched in silence as he finished an entire human leg. He let out a satisfied burp, then dragged the headless bodies of the 3 blood-robed brothers into a row. He knelt before the 3 corpses, his teeth gritted. "Don't worry, 3 fathers," he whispered. "I've memorized the enemy's face. I will pay any price to avenge you." Hiding in the shadows, I felt a chill run down my spine. It was a good thing I hadn't left. If I had allowed a demonic enemy with a special physique to survive, the future trouble would have been endless. I expected him to bury the bodies. Instead, he did something that left me speechless. This boy, who had just sworn to avenge his fathers, reached down and tore out their hearts. He began to eat them. Even the most heartless wild animals don't usually eat their own parents. I gripped my sword, ready to end this monster. But then, he muttered something else. 3 fathers. Mama will love your flesh. I'll take your legs back for her to eat." I paused. There was a 5th person? I suppressed my killing intent and decided to wait. I would follow him to his mother and kill them both together. Shueisha moved quickly toward the end of the canyon, disappearing behind a waterfall. I kept my divine sense locked on him and followed. Behind the water lay an ancient tunnel with man-made walls. After walking for half an hour, we entered a desolate palace. In the center of the hall, 2 iron pillars stood tall. Chained to them was a woman. She was completely naked, but her skin had been scrubbed clean. Her eyes were hollow, devoid of any soul, like a living puppet. Scattered around the base of the pillars were small bones, the unmistakable remains of infants. My blood ran cold. I scanned her with the system. Name, Yin Nanxian. Lifespan, 10 years. Cultivation, flame spirit art. Realm, 5th level of chi condensation. Aptitude, fire heavenly root. Favorability, 5. A heavenly root? My heart hammered against my ribs. First a special physique, now a heavenly root cultivator? Since when was legendary talent this common in a place like Blood Demon Cliff? Wait, Yin Nanxian. The name felt familiar, like a memory buried under decades of dust. While I tried to place the name, Shueisha approached her, holding the 2 bloody legs like a prize. He had a proud, seeking approval look on his face. Mama, look what I brought you, he chirped. Yin Nanxian's eyes remained vacant, but her face twisted in physical disgust. Mama, these are third father's legs, the boy said, looking like a child waiting for a hug. Didn't you always say you wanted to eat their flesh raw? I brought it for you. When she didn't respond, his expression soured. Mama isn't praising me. I have to punish you. You animal, I growled. I couldn't watch any longer. I moved. A flash of sword light crossed the room, and Shueisha's head spun off his shoulders. As the boy's body slumped, the woman's eyes flickered with a brief spark of life. She looked at the headless corpse of her tormentor, then at me as I stepped out of the shadows. You aren't one of those 3 beasts, she rasped. Her voice was like grinding stones. Who are you? I flicked my wrist, pulling a robe from my storage bag and draping it over her. My mind was racing. I finally remembered who she was. Decades ago, Yin Nanxian was the star of the Taishan sect. We had joined the sect at the same time. Because I had high-grade spiritual roots, I made it into the inner sect, but she was on another level. As a heavenly root, she was scouted by a golden core elder immediately. She was the most envied person in our generation. But she hadn't been arrogant. She was kind, treated everyone as equals, and because she was the strongest among us, we all called her Big Senior Sister. I wasn't close to her, but we had shared conversations. Then, I had damaged my foundation for Su Wanli and moved to the outer sect. I lost touch with the inner circle. The last time I heard of her was 30 years ago. She had reached the peak of the foundation establishment stage and left to travel the world to find her path to Golden Core. She never returned. Everyone thought she had died. Her master had spent 20 years searching for her until he went mad with grief. I never imagined I would find her here, in this hellhole. The Taishan Sutra, that's the breath of the Taishan Sutra, she whispered. Her body began to shake violently. Are you from the sect? I stayed silent. I didn't know what to say. The radiant, golden girl who was kind to everyone was gone. Her cultivation had plummeted from the peak of foundation establishment down to the 5th level of chi condensation. Her pride and her Tao heart were shattered pieces on the floor. You recognize me, don't you? She asked. Her voice was a mix of joy, shame, and sheer terror. I opened my mouth, but the words felt like lead in my throat. I looked at her, the words stuck in my throat, but I couldn't bring myself to say them. I just lowered my head and whispered, Senior Sister, let me get you out of here first. I unsheathed my sword and shattered the iron chains binding her. The moment she was free, Yin Nanxian didn't say a word. She sprinted out of the shop like a madwoman. I didn't try to stop her. I just followed behind, making sure to grab Shueisha's storage bag before I left. She didn't run far. Once she cleared the hidden passage, she dove straight into the small lake beneath the waterfall. She scrubbed her body with a desperate, violent intensity, as if she were trying to peel off her own skin. She didn't stop until her flesh was raw and bleeding. Then, she just stood there in the middle of the lake, dazed, unable to believe she had actually escaped that hellhole. I stood by the shore, watching her in silence. It took nearly an hour for the reality to sink in. When it finally did, she collapsed in the water and wailed. It was a haunting, gut-wrenching sound. I sighed, left a set of my own clean clothes on a rock by the bank, and walked away to give her some space. I went back to the valley and looked at the mountain of corpses. I pulled out a blazing fire talisman and activated it. Within the hour, The intense flames had turned the pile of bodies to ash. Only the three brothers remained where they fell. When I returned to the lake, Yin Nanxian had dressed in my clothes. She had used her internal heat to dry her hair, which now hung loosely over her shoulders. Her face was clean, but the decades of torture had stripped away her former radiance, leaving her skin pale and withered. She stared at me for a long time. Finally, she spoke. "Your junior brother Lu Feng, aren't you?" My heart skipped a beat. I knew that what had happened to her wasn't my fault, but hearing her recognize me made my chest tighten. My eyes felt hot. I took a deep breath, composed myself, and bowed deeply. Junior brother Lu Feng greets big senior sister. A faint, fragile smile touched her lips. "It really is you. When I left the Taishin sect, I heard your spiritual roots were damaged and your path was cut off. Seeing you at the middle stage of foundation establishment now, did you find a way to fix your roots?" I shook my head. "No, I just got lucky." "Luck is enough," she said softly. "As long as you keep breaking through, you might even have a chance at the golden core stage. That's already much better than me." I stayed silent as she began to tell her story. She had refused her master's protection years ago, wanting to temper her heart in the mortal world to aid her breakthrough. In her second year, she met the three brothers. Back then, they were just lowly rogue cultivators. They treated her like a goddess, showering her with flattery. She was a genius in cultivation, but she was naive to the ways of the world. She let them follow her. They heard rumors of a golden core cultivator's tomb in the Black Mountains and went to investigate. Everything went well at first. They found the main hall, the place where I found her, and discovered the 3 jade tubs. But the eldest brother accidentally triggered a trap. Yin Nanxian fought with everything she had to save them, but she was gravely injured in the process. She thought they would take her back to the sect. Instead, they showed their true nature. They imprisoned her, used dark techniques to shatter her dantian, dropping her cultivation back to the qi condensation stage, and took turns brutalizing her. They didn't kill her because they wanted her to bear their children. They figured a genius from the Taishin sect would produce genius offspring they could use to rise in power. She tried to kill herself multiple times, but every time she neared death, they forced a blood-red pill down her throat to save her. She became nothing more than a breeding tool. Her first few children only had mediocre roots, so the brothers killed the infants right in front of her. It wasn't until 16 years ago, when Shueisha was born with a special constitution, that they were satisfied. She thought her nightmare would end then, that they would finally kill her, but it only got worse. She had lived in a trance until Shueisha's blood splashed onto her face today. "Animals," I hissed, clenching my fists. I felt a surge of regret. If I had known what they had done, I wouldn't have let them die so quickly. Yin Nanxian, however, looked calm. Her heart had died a long time ago. She looked at me and said, "Junior brother Lu, can you do me a favor?" "Anything," I replied. "If it's within my power, I'll do it." "My family lives in the Anshan prefecture of the Luwu kingdom," she whispered. "They have some reputation in the local cultivation world. If you ever have the chance, go back to the Yin family for me. If my parents are still alive, just look at them from a distance, then come to my grave and tell me how they are. If they've passed, just light 3 sticks of incense for them." My face paled. "Senior sister, I can take you back to the sect. Your master searched for you for 20 years. He'll find a way to heal you." "I'm not going back," she sighed. "I've failed my master. I don't want him to know what I've been through. It would only create a heart demon for him and ruin his chances of reaching the nascent soul stage. Don't tell him you saw me. If you do, he'll pressure you for my location, and it will only bring you trouble." Suddenly, her hand moved like a claw. Before I could react, she plunged her fingers into her own chest and tore out her own heart. "Senior sister," I screamed. She coughed up a spray of blood, but her hand was clutching a small, blood-stained jade tub she had pulled from her chest cavity. She gasped for air, forcing out her final words. "Junior brother, the contents of this tub are the true treasure of that golden core cultivator. I swallowed it when those animals weren't looking and used a secret method to hide it in my heart. They never knew. Now it's yours. Use it to avenge me and see my parents." Her grip went slack. The light in her eyes vanished, and her body began to tilt. I caught her before she hit the ground, taking the jade tub from her cold hand. Rest easy, senior sister, I whispered. I promise. I'll do everything you asked. I laid her body gently on the grass. I went into the woods, felled a few large trees, and fashioned a simple wooden casket. I placed her inside, hoisted the casket onto my back, and walked away from the lake, heading back into the depths of the valley. I carried the mangled remains of the 3 blood-robe brothers as I left that place. Half a day later, I reached a murky swamp teeming with vicious crocodiles. I didn't hesitate. I tossed the severed limbs and broken bodies of those 3 monsters into the water. The starving reptiles caught the scent of blood and went into a total frenzy. They lunged forward, snapping their jaws and tearing into the flesh. I watched as they swallowed every piece of those animals, one bite at a time. "This is better than you deserve," I muttered coldly. I turned away and kept moving with the casket on my back. Much later, I found a high cliff deep within the Black Mountain Range. It was a quiet, secluded spot. I dug a deep grave into the earth on that cliffside and carefully lowered Yin Nanshi's casket into it. By the time I finished burying her, the sun was beginning to dip below the horizon. I sat at the edge of the cliff, watching the sunset paint the sky like a beautiful masterpiece. "Goodbye, senior sister," I whispered softly. By midnight, I made my way back to the hidden cave where I had left Lan Meiju. She was still clinging to life. I had intentionally kept her breathing because I wasn't sure if the location she gave me for the Blood Demon Cliff was a lie. Now that I knew the truth, her time was up. Lan Meiju seemed to sense that death was standing over her. Her eyes fluttered open, and she saw me.